Good morning, everybody. I would love to welcome you and thanks for joining us today for the 40th anniversary of the Child Rights Connect. And it's just wonderful to see you all here after so many years of only meeting online. It's really an exceptional experience to give hugs and meet again the friends and colleagues from all over the world. So we are celebrating today the 40th anniversary of the Child Rights Connect, of restless advocacy in Geneva and globally to advance child rights. Would we have the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child as progressive as it is without the advocacy of the NGO groups for the Convention on the Rights of the Child? Would we have the most extensive civil society and children's participation in the whole treaty body system? Would we have so many national child rights coalitions conducting joint monitoring and advocacy to hold states accountable? I'm sure you would agree with me that the answer is no, definitely no. The Child Rights Connect network has been a key driver of the global child rights movement. So for our 40th anniversary, we felt compelled to facilitate a critical discussion on where the child rights movement stands and where it needs to go. The child rights movement has been evolving, especially in the past few years, with an increasing leading role and activism by child human rights defenders. The mobilization of children around climate change has been an historical milestone. Children are no longer waiting to be consulted by adults. They are no longer waiting for NGOs or the UN to include them in their projects. Instead, at their own right, children are more and more taking actions, including legal actions, and are the forefront of social movements calling for democracy, equality, rule of law, and for the defense of human rights for all. Unfortunately, however, this is happening in the context of an increasingly polarized world and societies where the fundamental values and the sense of common humanity that underpin the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are attacked by a diverse range of stakeholders. Within this broader context, a pushback against children's rights definitely exists. We must understand it and we have to address it. It's in its own specificities and significance, taking into account both its long-standing history and the latest developments. It is time to change the narrative around child rights and do more and more to overcome the old paternalistic and charity approaches that are rooted within and outside the child rights movement and that holds back all of us from progressing and advancing against the anti-rights movements. Children are offering us the opportunity to further our thinking and our work, and we cannot miss this very unique opportunity. I therefore encourage you to participate in today's discussion with a very strong critical thinking and a transparent and clear, outspoken way in an open approach. Let us take the advantage of the unique and wide audience that we have with us today, including past directors and presidents of the network, who we are especially welcome here, and child advisors from our new permanent children's advisory team, which is also demonstrating our commitment to the very active participation and partnership with children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mari. My name is Alex Conte, Executive Director of Child Rights Connect, and I'm delighted that you're all here with us. We're just waiting for the Ambassador of Switzerland to the United Nations here in Geneva to join us online. In the meantime, maybe I can go through some housekeeping, the boring stuff. So this is a paperless conference. As you will have seen, we have a digital conference pack that is available from our conference webpage. If you have any issues in accessing that, that's www.childrightsconnect.org, changing-the-narrative, and you can download the digital conference pack there. First and foremost, I want to mention that we have children with us. We have children with us in person and online, and this will be a very important opportunity to ensure their empowerment as well as to ensure their safeguarding. This conference was prepared in liaison with our children's advisory team and our permanent children's advisory team. They will be engaged in the conference and in the follow-up to it. And the conference is therefore founded on the principle of safe, empowering, inclusive and sustained participation of children. Up front in the conference pack, you'll see mention of our child safeguarding policy and procedure. And we've outlined 4 key principles, and I just want to reiterate those now. 1, use accessible language. We as adults tend to get caught up in acronyms, in technical terms, and no doubt in thinking about some of the issues that we will today, we will tend to fall back on that. Think about the language that you are all using. Be sensitive and give encouragement to our child participants. For some of them, this is the first time being engaged in an audience like this with such distinguished delegates. I'm sure that you also have worked with children and will have a good approach in encouraging them. Listen, give the opportunity for someone to speak, to finish what they're saying, and be safe. I've outlined issues concerning safety in the conference pack. It's in detail in our child safeguarding policy and procedure. Can I in particular remind you not to take pictures or videos of children without their prior consent, and preferably not at all, and not to post anything on social media that might identify children. Zhuja, could you stand for a moment, is our child participation and safeguarding officer. She'll be roaming throughout the day. If you have any issues or see any thing that might concern you regarding the well-being or safety of a child, please let her know. She's assisted also by Eamon. Eamon, stand. Who will also be with us. And in the conference pack, you'll also see an email address should you want to follow up in writing on any issues. For Zoom links, just to reiterate for those of you that are online, the current link that you are on is the link for all sessions except the working groups. So please refer to the digital conference pack or our web page for the particular Zoom links for each of the working groups. In terms of when we split for working groups, we have not taken an approach of designating anyone to any particular working groups, because after the panel sessions, we will split for parallel working groups. We felt that this was important to allow you to either be involved in a working group that you have expertise in or that you want to learn more about or engage in. So please feel free to join whichever working group you like. Just a note that where we split to room 2-3, which is on the first floor, there is a maximum capacity of 40 to 50 persons. So just bear that in mind. We have, so that's almost half of the room. Coffee is served outside for our coffee breaks. Lunch will be served in the cafeteria on the first floor. Enjoy, be critical. We look forward to your views and your engagement. Can I just check whether we have the ambassador? No. Okay. I just ask you to be patient for a moment or two. Thank you.
She's from the part of my permanent representative, Jörg Lauber. Unfortunately, he's having connection problems. he would really like to be with you, and yeah, really sends his apologies for not being here. And my apologies, I'm joining you from home office, so if you hear my children in the background, please bear with me. Excellencies, mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, et surtout chers enfants. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue à cette conférence consacrée aux droits de l'enfant. Ceci fait déjà 40 ans que la Genève internationale est au cœur de l'engagement pour les droits des enfants. 40 ans, c'est un âge significatif. Et comme dans la vie d'une personne, à 40 ans, on a souvent déjà atteint beaucoup, on sait qui on est plutôt bien dans sa peau, mais on sent aussi le besoin de changer certaines choses. Croyez-moi, je suis en train d'y passer. Je trouve que cela reflète assez bien le mouvement pour les droits des enfants aussi. Parmi les succès du mouvement, je citerai tout particulièrement l'élaboration et l'adoption de la Convention relative aux droits de l'enfant. Non seulement la Convention a clairement établi tout éventail des droits de l'enfant, une des seules conventions internationales des droits de l'homme couvrant tant les droits civils et politiques que les droits économiques, sociaux et culturels. Il s'agit aussi de la Convention en matière de droits de l'homme qui jouit d'une ratification quasi universelle, accroissant sa très grande légitimité. La Suisse est convaincue du rôle primordial que joue le système onusien des droits de l'homme, basé à Genève, dans la réalisation de ces droits. À titre d'exemple, je citerai le Comité des droits de l'enfant, chargé de surveiller la mise en œuvre de la Convention, mais aussi le Conseil des droits de l'homme et ses procédures spéciales. Nous devons assurer notre soutien politique ainsi que les ressources humaines et financières nécessaires afin de garantir le bon fonctionnement de ce système. Excellencies, colleagues, dear children, in addition to crucial UN bodies, Geneva is also the home to other important actors. Civil society, including you, the children present here today, and others in all parts of the world, as well as children human rights defenders and Child Rights Connect as a coalition, are key in ensuring the fulfillment of children's rights across the globe. Switzerland will continue its close partnership with civil society, including human rights defenders, when it comes to the promotion and protection of human rights. At the academic level, important research on children's rights comes out of the University of Geneva. So Geneva has played and continues to play an important role when it comes to children's rights. To all of the actors active on the topic, I would like to say thank you. Thank you for your work and your commitment to children's rights. Thanks to you, the children's rights movement has advanced and known many successes. En tant qu'État, nous le devons à chaque enfant de faire des droits de l'enfant une réalité. C'est notre responsabilité de prendre des mesures concrètes afin de protéger les enfants et de leur offrir un espace sûr pour grandir, profiter de leur enfance et développer leur personnalité. La Suisse relève ce défi et s'engage. La Suisse met par exemple en œuvre des initiatives pour mettre fin à la violence envers les enfants et s'engage pour promouvoir la réintégration des anciens enfants soldats dans leur société. En tant que membre non permanent du Conseil de sécurité, nous avons fait de la protection des civils, y inclus des enfants, dans les conflits armés une de nos priorités. Malgré notre engagement, de nombreux défis persistent. Let me now turn to some areas of growth of our 40-year-old middle-aged. Unfortunately, like human rights in general, children's rights have also come under attack, and we've heard that already before, and have been questioned by some actors. So how do we react to that, and where do we go from here? I unfortunately do not have the answer, but I am convinced that gathering here today to reflect and strategize about changing the narrative is an important step. I'm also convinced that the diverse and collaborative nature of the children's rights movement is its force. I am furthermore convinced that you, the children, are its strength. You see and know things that we don't. Your opinions and ideas are valuable. So please speak up also during this conference. And to the adults, listen. Looking into the future, I'm also very pleased that the Secretary General of the UN will adopt a guidance note this summer, calling on all agencies and mechanisms of the UN to adopt a child rights approach in their work. This truly has the potential to achieve systemic change and is an opportunity that we should all seize. So let's get to work. Merci de votre attention.
That was our first and only hiccup for the day. Thank you, Mari. Thank you, everyone. We'll now change the panel for our change makers.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what we believe is going to be one of the most inspiring, joyful sessions of this morning. My name is Dana Buzduca. I am the global leader for advocacy and external engagement for World Vision International. And I am so grateful to the organizers for allowing me to moderate this amazing session. And I would like to start by introducing our panel today. So let me start with Fran. Just tell us your age and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Fran. I'm 15 years old and I'm from Croatia.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gloria. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Cameroon.
Hi, I'm Catarina. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Brazil.
Thank you all. So we are in amazing presence of very wise young people. And World Vision International had a global campaign on ending violence against children. And during this campaign, we realized what an amazing resource children and young people are as advocates and as change makers. And we have witnessed how when we are engaging with children and adolescents and young people at the community level, they can really change their community for the better. We have witnessed them working on reducing child marriage, reducing violence in school and in families. We have witnessed them working hand in hand with civil society organizations to change policies and to help implement those policies. That's why we called them the change makers, because through their tireless work, they demonstrated that actually they are the actors that we need to involve every single day if we want the changes that we are dreaming about to be sustainable. So this year, for the campaign, we decided to create a global change makers movement. And we wanted to recognize not only the young people who are those who are making the change at the community level, but also those institutions who, through their work and through the way they are engaging with children and young people, are making a positive change in advancing children's rights. And therefore, they benefit everybody. So this is why today it is my privilege to recognize Child Rights Connect, Children's Advisory Team, as change makers. So let's give them a round of applause for that. So without further ado, I think it is important, and we all are looking forward to hear from our change makers. So let me start with the first question that is for Fran. So Fran, how do you make a change in the world by engaging with your community?
So hi, my name is Fran, and I make a change in the world like that I'm a member of many organizations in my country in which I am participating with my friends and my child colleagues, like Children's City Council and National Early Child Forum. So, for example, Children's City Council is an activity in my city which enables children, gives them a right to speak, to participate, and enables them to improve their own city. So I was a member of that organization for 2 years, and I participated like that. We had a sessions, 1 to 2 sessions a month, and on those sessions we were asking questions. City mayor, we were asking him about some changes in our city, some parts that we don't like or we are not comfortable with. So we, as city mayor, is it possible to change that, or how can we do something to stop that? And that is it. So we also have we children give out proposals in our city for the big city budget, and we also have small city budget, but we give proposals for the big one and also the small one. So the second organization is a National Early Child Forum. I'm also participating in that organization like that. I'm with my friends and my child colleagues, but they're from all around the country, and I'm participating with them in improvement not of our city but of our country. Like the same way, we are having many meetings and meeting sessions with all the important people. So that is how I make a change in my city, country, and overall in the world. Thank you.
That's inspiring. Thank you. Do you have a question for me?
So I have a question for you, Dana. What are your projects in World Vision, and what are you doing there? What is your role?
Thank you, Fran. World Vision works in almost 100 countries around the world, and our projects are humanitarian projects that are saving children's lives in some of the hardest to reach places of the planet, in some of the conflict areas, or when certain disasters occur, but also development projects. And World Vision really stands with the children and trying to build together communities so that the communities are able to put children at the center, such as the work that you are doing to make sure that your community, the decision makers in your city and in your country, have children at the center of everything they decide upon. Similarly, World Vision is trying in everything we do to put children at the center of that work. And my role is to lead advocacy and external engagement. That means really trying to work with our colleagues in programming to take the lessons that we are learning where things are working right and propose changes at the legislative level that would make the world better for the children. And in everything we do, we are trying not to speak on behalf of the children, but to create that space where children's voices can be heard directly, and you can make a change for you and your peers.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me let me go to our next panelist. And Gloria, how do you make a change in the world with your organization, Children for Peace?
So, hi everyone, my name is Gloria. I'm the project manager at Children for Peace and child advisor at Child Connect. I'm also an international human rights defender. So I want to explain the socio-political context of Africa. So terrorist groups are imposing several dedicates on the Chad, and Cameroon is not exempted. We had the first attack in 2012 by the anti-Balakra group, and we had the second attack in 2014 by the Boko Haram, and we also had the third attack in 2016 by the Anglophone crisis. So I have been shocked to hear unspeakable horror inflicted by terrorist group, causing thousands of families to flee along with their homes on very inhuman conditions. So I decided to co-create Children for Peace, a girl-led organization committed to increase the number of children in peace building and making them human rights defenders. So regarding to Cameroon, which is characterized of a lot of culture and dialect, one of the specificities of my work is cartoon oriented. Firstly, to explain the challenges of peace building, and secondly, to explain the stories of boys and girls who have experienced sexual violence. I've also implemented some important projects within Children for Peace, as the project Silence the Gun is an integrated citizen engagement led by girls in order to realize conflict-free Africa by mobilizing all stakeholders in order to prioritize effort for peace. And the second project I've implemented is the project Disarmament. The project is aiming to fight against child enrollment and contribute to the restoration of their security. And the third project I've implemented is a project African Parliament for Girls. It's an official forum created for girls in order to look at the local and global problem and come up with their own solution. So these are some impacts of my work. Over 5 million children sensitized and over 50,000 children engaged in the HE Gender Club for Peace. Thank you.
What better example than children engaging for peace? Thank you so much for that, Gloria. Congratulations on such important work.
Thank you. So then I have a question for you. What kind of challenges do you face in your work?
Thank you for that question. I think the challenges that we face in World Vision are very common to the colleagues who are here in the room. We are living in a changing world and the pace of change is unprecedented. The number of challenges for children and the amplitude of the challenges that we are seeing require urgent action. And it's becoming so difficult to try to prioritize where do we need to put our effort first? How do we act in a way that is wise and efficient so that we can do something that is relevant for the children right now? And in trying to do that, Gloria, what I discovered as a professional together with my team is that we can only do things together. I believe that is becoming more urgent than ever that we join hands. First, we join hands with the children and make sure that we are not trying to assume what they are going through, but we actually ask them directly and we try to find solution directly with you. Because the solutions that you are seeing sometimes are just so agile, so efficient, and they are so applicable to you and your generation. The other challenge is to really make sure that we are able, as an organization, but especially as a community, to draw the attention of decision makers, including governments, or maybe especially governments, on the children and to help them put the children at the center of everything they do. And that is becoming increasingly difficult in a world that is confronting just too many crises at the same time. And in a world that is battling climate change, for example, or conflicts, or situations where hunger is increasing around the world. How can we work together to raise our voices so that children are not forgotten in this agenda? Because without investment in children, there is very or less credible chance that we are actually investing in sustainability of the work that we are doing. Make sense? Yeah. Thank you. And we are moving to Katarina. Katarina, how do you make a change in the world with the participation of social environmental projects and the change of habits?
Well, thank you for your question. I'm Katarina, a climate global activist, surfer, and student. How I make a change in the world is, first of all, through the changes of habits. And in my day-to-day, I always think of how to act so that I can construct the positive change I believe the world needs. In addition, I'm part of many organizations, one of them being Air, Sur, Oceans, which is my supporting organization here. It is an organization built by children for children. They empower youth leaders to understand the crisis that we are dealing in the present, such as the climate crisis, the water crisis, food crisis, and how we can create solutions and also empower other children to be able to deal with them. Furthermore, I also have my own sustainable and environmental educational project called Eco Clube Sustentare, focused locally. We are creating an online platform for people to have access to environmental information through children's vision. And therefore, we are gonna bring our vision and talk about different aspects of the sustainability of children's rights. And in addition to that, we also want to work with the local communities, especially the marginalized communities. For those who don't know, Brazil have marginalized communities such as slums. These are places that people don't have basic sanitation, people don't have access to basic education, they don't have access to security. Children have to be dealing with violence every single day, waking up thinking if they are gonna be shot or not. And therefore, we want to work with these communities, find solutions with these communities, and empower them to be able to take care of themselves, and through that also have a sustainable development. Furthermore, talking about local projects, my first activist fight was through the protection of a local forest, Mata Atlântica, called Vale Encantado. And we have a project called SOS Vale Encantado, where we participate of this, I participate of this fight until today. And it's also very important to remember that children have the rights to nature. And so protecting these areas are essential for my generation to have access to them in the future. Finally, I want to bring a very important experience that I had in 2019, where me and other 15 youths filed the first and only petition that was ever filed on the Committee of the Rights of the Child, denouncing 5 countries for violating our rights because of inaction in the climate crisis. And this is something that is occurring until today, that we have to keep pushing for actions, because if we don't, our rights are going to be continuously violated. And once again, we are going to be the ones having to keep solving the issues. And therefore, I want to thank you all for your attention, and please ask for all of you to think also of habits on your day-to-day of how you can make a change in the world, and finalize urging all of you that are in power or have the possibility of pushing those in power to also participate of this change through legislations and also fiscalization to make sure this change will occur. Thank you.
Wow, Katarina, the passion and we can almost feel your heartbeat in this room, right? Amazing work. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dana. And now I want to ask you a question. So what are your passions, and how do you stay motivated to continue acting on sensitive topics such as violence against children?
I would like to talk more about my dream. I still dream that we will live in a world that is putting children first in everything we do, in all the decisions that we are making. because I think if we will be able to do that, everything will be so much easier for everybody. But you're right, staying motivated around such a vision when sometimes the news are not positive, and it seems like we are taking one step forward, 2 steps back in a lot of the work that we are doing. It can be a little bit demotivating. But when I'm meeting young people like you, when I'm looking a little bit longer term, where we started and see how far we got, having a panel like this with children and the attention and enthusiasm of an audience of your caliber, I think that speaks volumes of the fact that actually nothing is lost. We continue to build on the successes of the children who have been fighting and standing up for children's right, including children's right to participate. And that gives me hope. That is my main source of hope. Just looking long term of where we want to go, standing together. I'm seeing so many colleagues and friends in this room that are passionate and are movers and shakers in this essential area of the work that is protecting children's rights, standing with the children for their rights. And that is extremely motivating. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we give another round of applause to my amazing panelists? And I have been asked to introduce an animation and a video message that we have from other child advisors, if we are ready.
Hi everyone, I'm Roeda. I'm 14 years old from Tunisia and I am one of the Child Advisory Team 2023. We have a total of 12 members from all over the world. There is Freja, who is 12 from Canada. Katrina, who is 16 and from Brazil. Anna Katarina, who is from Venezuela and 17 years old. Arjun, who is 14 and from Nepal. From Moldova, we have Angelina, who is 16. Gloria is 15 years old and from Cameroon. Miguel Angel is 12 years old and Mexican. Doris is 14 and from Zambia. Hannah is from Palestine and 15 years old. Fran from Croatia, who is also 15. And finally, Tristan, who is 15 and from Iceland. Good luck for our conference.
Hi, I'm Fran from Canada and I just turned 12 today. Being a member of the Child Advisory Team is so important to me. To think that my voice can join with 11 others from around the world, working together to make a difference in the lives of children. If I had known a few short years ago that I would be connecting with kids from all over the world to help protect and improve the rights of children, I would not have believed it. We connect as a team in a number of different ways. We use Basecamp as our main communication and planning platform and hold virtual meetings via Zoom to focus on the various topics we've been assigned. Thank you for watching.
Amazing work. And after you've seen who are the members of the Child Rights Connect Children's Advisory Team, you will understand why World Vision really wanted to recognize them as change makers. So thank you so much for this presentation. Any one of the panelists, one last word before we close?
Thank you all for your patience and for participating, for listening. It is a pleasure to sit here right now, and I know there are more children to participate like us, and it is a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that thank you for your presence. Thank you for this beautiful audience, and really thank you for all.
Well, finally, I would also like to thank you all for the attention, and also finalize with the call to action. Once again, we need adults to listen to children, but not only listen, take us seriously and put what we're saying into action. So thank you so much, and let's start making change.
Thank you all very much. We're taking a picture of the panel.
Hello, everyone. Me again. Now, we're gonna be moving to the morning plenary panel, the anti-child rights rhetoric and challenges for the child rights movement. And I would like to call the panelists here, Barbara Hinterman and Philip Jaffe, please. And we're gonna see that Najat Maala will be joining us through Zoom. Well, so for those who don't know, the child rights movement and children human rights defenders face unique challenges in their efforts to promote and protect children's rights. As a child human rights defender myself, I understand that these challenges exist and strongly urge discussions to find solutions to such issues. Some of the challenges my generation encounters are lack of awareness and understanding, limited recognition and credibility, especially due to age difference, and safety and security issues, included but not limited to harassment, threats, intimidation, and violence. Additionally, the lack of resources and political will is a big contributor to the challenges, as well as legal barriers and restrictions that prevent children from exercising their rights. Furthermore, stigmatization and social repercussions within their communities and families, and the lack of specialized support and guidance are also big contributors. Thus, during this panel, we're going to speak with three incredible high-level speakers. First, we're going to have Najat Maala Majid. She's the special representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, which will be joining us online through Zoom. We also have here Philip Jaffe, who is the professor of CIDE and member of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, and Barbara Hinterman, which is the Director General of Terre des Hommes Lausanne. Therefore, with them, we're going to deeply understand the anti-child right rhetoric and challenges for the child right movement, hopefully finding ways to aspire and consequently transcend the obstacles. Thank you. And now I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Najat Maala Majid. Dr. Najat Maala Majid serves as the special representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children and is a medical doctor. She plays a critical role in raising awareness and addressing the issue of violence against children on a global scale. She works closely with a wide range of stakeholders, including governments, civil society, and faith-based organizations, in addition to international bodies, to develop strategies, policies, and programs aimed at ending violence against children. Also, she advocates for empowering and involving children as part of the solution. I pass the floor to you, Ms. Najat.
Thank you, Katarina. Dear children, excellencies, and dear friends and partners, it is a real pleasure for me to join you today to celebrate Child Rights Connect and its partners for their 40 years of advancing children's rights. Dear children, dear civil society representative, thank you for your ongoing work, raising the flag and always alerting of important existing and new threats on children's well-being and protection. Thanks to many of your actions, we are able to sustain even higher advocacy efforts on the key role that children play as actors of change and the importance of their participation in decision-making process. Today, we are taking a moment to reflect on the achievement made, but also acknowledging the shortfalls and gaps to be closed for the realization of children's rights, mainly the right to protection and participation. And as you know better than me, the ongoing and multiple crises caused by armed conflict, political instability, food insecurity, climate crisis, coupled with the effects of health and economic crisis, are threatening children's rights, including the rights to protection, well-being, and participation. Another point, while the understanding of the critical importance of children's rights is widening, children are less and less visible and are facing a pushback regarding child participation, including child rights movement and child human rights defender. Let me share 3 key takeaways. Despite the barriers they face, children are making their voice heard and taking action, and I had the pleasure to listen to you. You are wonderful, and you are inspiring, and you give me and you give to all of us energy that we needed more than ever. I know from my country mission, partners and children themselves, children worldwide are speaking up, taking initiative, providing peer support and guidance, defending the right to safe, peaceful, just, healthy, and inclusive environment. They practice their activism through social media, community and civic engagement, participation in decision-making processes, child and youth-led peaceful protests, and social mobilization movements, and many more. These are some examples among many others. In Kenya, for example, a group of working children led a walk to create awareness about their right to light and limited work, to rest when sick, to age-appropriate work, and legal representation to protect themselves from abuse. Students from 8 Pacific Island countries spearheaded a campaign that resulted in a UN General Assembly landmark resolution that's been sponsored by Vanuatu and more than 130 member states. In Afghanistan, girls are demanding the right to education despite a strict governmental ban. They take precautions to protect and support each other and the right to education. In India, a 17-year-old girl arranged peaceful protests, educate girls and women on their rights, and speak with parents on the importance of girls' education and the harmful effects of child labor and child marriage. In the UK, France, and Germany, children participated in a coordinated walkout to demand action on climate change. My second message, but many children do not have a safe pathway to expression, participation, and action. Many children, mainly the most vulnerable, are not enjoying their rights and have no possibility to express themselves or to speak up. They are forgotten and invisible. They have no possibility or means to participate. They are not aware of their rights. They live in society where speaking up is hardly possible because it is not approved by adults or seen as breach of social or cultural norm. And when they do speak up, when they come together for a peaceful protest, when they take action to achieve what they believe is just, they face barriers and are exposed to various risks such as violence, repression, stigmatization, harassment, arrest, retaliation, and threats, all posed by adults with authority. This power imbalance makes children more vulnerable to abuse of power and authority. When involving law enforcement, children may be intimidated, less aware of their rights, and there may be a sense of mistrust in institutions. Stigmatization and harassment of human rights defenders and child activists can also occur in online settings. Children who participate in assemblies may be subject to online threats, surveillance, and digital attacks. My third message, protection and empowerment are 2 key elements of the same equation. The world made a promise to children in the Sustainable Development Goal to end all forms of violence against children by 2030. While children's protection is a priority, children's activists cannot be curtailed in the name of protection. Children need to be empowered. Empowerment of children is about safe and equitable access to information and tools, including through digital means. It is also about expressing themselves, being consulted on all matters affecting them, taking a life cycle approach. Empowering children is making them aware of their personal safety and of their peers and what they can do to stay safe. Children's empowerment and protection will take an intergenerational whole of society approach. For children to fully exercise their rights, adults around them, parents and caregivers, social workers, teachers, health caregivers, judges, police, religious and community leaders must also be empowered and supported to transform harmful and discriminatory social and cultural norms into child rights positive practices. They need to learn how to listen actively to children. And children and young people's sense of mistrust in the formal and informal institution need to be addressed and overcome. Participation carries a significance in social and emotional development of children. Children who speak up, who participate in peaceful collective action, who act as environmental and human rights defenders, feel empowered as active citizens. It is imperative that all children have access to safe pathway to participation. Dear children, dear friends and colleagues, 2023 marks a significant year for our promise to build just, inclusive, healthy, enabling, and safe society for and with children. The child rights community must take advantage of the key SDG moment leading up to the summit, including the high-level political forum in July, to ensure that children and their well-being, including their right to participation, are at the heart of the negotiation processes and outcomes, such as Global Digital Compact, COP 2018, and the summit political declaration. This will also set a clear path towards a successful summit of the future in 2024. Children are the parents and caregivers of the future generation, so they need to be on board now. Children are not a problem to be solved. They are part of the solution. Children are inspiring, are leading the way despite the challenges they face. We need all of us to do more and more, to work together, to avoid competing, to ensure all children are seen, heard, and engaged as key partners and change makers. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Najat. It was really inspiring listening to you talking about adults listening to us and how children are making their voices heard and how children need protection and empowerment because we are intergenerational. And I also loved your last sentence, how you talked about us not being a problem to be solved, but part of the solution. That was really inspirational. And I also want to congratulate you on an action that you're doing of being one of the only UN members doing child-friendly versions of your reports. I think that shows how your work of involving children is really important. And so I would like to congratulate you on that. So thank you so much. And now we're moving on to the next panelist, Philip Jaffe. He is an academic and human rights advocate serving as a professor at the Centre Interfacultaire in Doctrice de la Font. Sorry, my French is not really good. SIDE, and is a member of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. Professor Jaffe's expertise lies in child psychology, child protection, and the intersection of law and child rights. Finally, he strives to influence policies and practices worldwide, ensuring the rights and well-being of children. Thank you, and I pass the microphone to you.
Well, thank you very much, Katerina, and hello to everyone. You know, the French author Victor Hugo once wrote, 40 years is the old age of youth, 50 is the youth of old age. And so very subtly, he gives us reason to rejoice. Child Rights Connect is leaving the old age of youth and entering the youth of old age. So happy birthday, Child Rights Connect, and congratulations for all that you have achieved during the last 40 years. But before this goes to your head, it is safe to say that you did not do this alone, and that you are part of a long and surprisingly successful process that began almost 100 years ago with Eglantine Jebb, a process that blossomed into a child rights movement, at first mostly composed of worthy adults that along the way produced a convention, a process that today is perhaps on the verge of being overtaken by child rights movements increasingly energized by children themselves. It's been a long journey from child protection with no child participation to a child rights revolution with what I have called total child participation. And the most visible and audible children of this revolution are children environmental rights activists who, supreme irony, are not only defending their own rights, but everybody's rights as human rights defenders, yours and mine. So what's going on? My Friday morning analysis, for what it is worth, is that Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the so-called revolutionary article, has empowered children and activated a revolution. For many years, civil society, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and more governments have, sometimes timidly, promoted listening to children and trying to take their views into account. In schools where children spend most of their waking hours, in courts, in settings related to children's rest, leisure, and play here and there, children have been integrated also in a form of political process. Children's parliaments, for example, where they are more or less consulted by decision makers. To me, it seems that children have been expertly channeled into a narrative of participation shaped by adults. But here's the catch. It was too good to be true. Once you open the door of participation, you no longer control the narrative. And over the past decade, many children decided to go it alone. They have discovered a different political voice that ignores and bypasses what adults have set up for them. Children are increasingly showing us collective child power, and some colleagues have written they have literally walked out of school and politics. Does Friday for Future ring a bell? Walking out of school, global protests. It was happening on a massive scale until COVID hit us, and now things are not so clear anymore. On the one hand, there has been a remobilization of child-led environmental activists, but for many, mixed with a dose of anger at government's apathy and lack of action. Sadly, I also hear of children who have given up because they don't see a way forward. They realize that having an impact is really difficult. Decision makers have not changed. They don't really listen. And all the while we are speaking, we keep hurtling towards 1.5 degrees and beyond. Eco-anxiety has also morphed in part into a child and adolescent mental health crisis, compounded by many other crises. But today, let's stay positive. One of the ingredients that is shaping the new narrative, and it's been alluded to several times already, the new narrative is that children are empowered by their generational mastery of digital technologies. It has become a vital tool enabling children's activism by allowing them to easily exchange information, organize, recruit, and take action. But for all the bad press concerning the digital environment, surveys also show that a significant percentage of children have been inspired into activism by what they discover on the internet. I hate to cite Elon Musk, but I think he is right. Public space is now on social media platforms. This is where there are so many challenges to address, so many causes to join. And children have branched out into becoming defenders of other movements fighting discrimination, gender stereotyping, and many other causes. The digital world has transformed children in many ways. For example, instantly sharing increases solidarity. The digital world has transformed childhood itself, and the construction of their identity. But this is for another day or another conference or another discussion. I would like to end with a couple more thoughts. One is that child rights defenders from the global South are incredibly inspirational. Najat and I recently attended the first African Child Summit in Kenya, and I think I can speak for both of us, we were blown away. And even my 14-year-old son was contaminated. And he has now joined a group of young activists, 13 to 17-year-olds, who will fight for more financial justice at the upcoming Paris Summit for a new global financial pact. How I produced a son this way, I don't know, but I'm so proud of him. All this makes me indeed feel very good, perhaps you as well, but of course there is a dark underbelly. Children defenders of human rights need a lot of help when they come from marginalized communities, poor and indigenous groups, and many others. Children with disabilities, who are also defenders of human rights, need a lot of support to make their voices heard, technical and human. And we collectively need to ensure the protection of all these children who are sticking out their heads, climbing on barricades, and who look to us to join them, not to lead, but to support. And a special thought for all the children, human rights defenders who live under constant threat. In a couple of countries, they even walk around with bodyguards, which is unbelievable when you think of it. So I know that Child Rights Connect is aiming in the direction of supporting human rights defenders. The committee is as well, the Committee on the Rights of the Child as well. We have a lot more work to do. So thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Philip. I thought it was really important when you brought the point about promoting children and integrating children, and also the point where you brought about the technological world and how it is a part of nowadays, and it's also part of our future, and how you emphasize how we also need protection, but that protection needs not to come as a leading, as children can be leaders, but as support. So thank you so much. And now we're going.
Just to mention that Najat needs to leave. She's leaving.
Dr. Najat will have to leave us. So thank you so much for your participation and for your work. So now we're gonna have our last and also really important panelist, Barbara Hinterman. She is Director General of the Terre des Hommes Lausanne Foundation. She plays a pivotal role in advancing the organization's mission of protecting and promoting the rights of children worldwide. She has been instrumental in implementing innovative programs and initiatives to address issues such as child exploitation, trafficking, and child labor. And she has leadership and strategic approach that have fostered collaborations with governments, NGOs, and grassroots organizations to create sustainable change. Thank you so much. And now I pass the floor to you, Ms. Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katharina. I would like first to thank Child Rights Connect that we can be a part of your journey. And we really appreciate very much the collaboration and the partnership we have. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, I'm really honored to be here today, and I'm so much honored to have Katharina here as our moderator. This is the first for me to have such an energizing young lady as a moderator. So really, thank you very much for taking this on. I'm very inspired by the panel before. Frank, Katharina, and Gloria, they gave me another push in my journey to fight for children's rights and their well-being. So this is really, again, a great honor that I could listen to that panel before. Here in the room and online, I believe that we all agree that every person has the right to promote and defend human rights. And every child has the right to act as children's rights defenders. This has been, by the way, highlighted again in the days of General Discussion 2018 during the UN General Assembly. In the past years, children have taken an active role in protecting their rights and addressing crises like the COVID pandemic and climate. We have heard that also this morning, recognizing the importance of raising their voices for their own rights and the rights of all humans, including future generations. Children are much affected by climate change around the globe, yet they are the less responsible for climate effects and from the climate change. So this feeling of injustice has led children and youth from across the world to actively engage in the fight against climate injustice, demonstrating their commitment to the cause. Children are taking matters into their own hands and using platforms to voice their concerns instead of relying solely on adults, which is again very encouraging. However, they face challenges in freely expressing their opinions due to concerns of safety. We have heard it before from the panelists, and of not being taken seriously. We have heard that call in the panel before, of not having the appropriate information. Hence, it is crucial to address these obstacles and ensure a safe environment for their collective representation, empowering all children to exercise their participatory rights in the access to justice. Children and young people understand well their concerns. This requires that collective capacities across the whole system should be empowered to ensure child and youth participation in an effective and meaningful manner. For Terre des Hommes, child participation and empowerment is one of our 5 organizational values and enshrined in our organization. That doesn't mean that we can do better, but it is very much anchored within our organization. So let me share with you an example, what I would say is an effective and meaningful child participation. During the pandemic, Terre des Hommes, together with other child protection organizations, launched the initiative #COVID-Under-19. It started with a child-friendly online survey designed by around 270 children from around the globe. About 27,000 children responded to the questions on their situation, on their needs, and then on their wishes. Data was then analyzed and fed into a global advocacy strategy on children's needs during the pandemic. Today, the initiative #COVID-Under-19 is a broad-based coalition led by child advisors and peer mentors, different parts of the world, and it is supported by Terre des Hommes and the partners of the initiative. They provide input and make choices on key priorities for child-centered programs and strategies, and advocate for policy changes that affect the present and also their future. This example shows that if ensuring the space, children gather their voices and empower each other to speak their mind, mobilizing their strengths for a common cause. Now, the support of civil society in drafting and implementing the UN Convention on Children's Rights is vital, as they actively participate in the state reporting process, submit alternative reports, form coalitions, and serve as a bridge between active civil society groups and the concerns of children during crisis. This calls for ensuring that children have the right to peaceful assemblies without facing criminalization, and that they are empowered as child rights defenders with the ability to participate in strategic litigation, amplifying their voices and advocating for their rights effectively. Now, on the protection of peaceful assemblies. All children have the right to engage in peaceful assemblies as guaranteed by Article 15 of the UN Convention on Child Rights. Governments must therefore ensure that children are not to be criminalized or face the risk of threat or violence for exercising their right to have peaceful gatherings, assemblies. It is important to balance the protection of children's vulnerability with recognizing their evolving capacities and autonomy. This ensures the meaningful participation and access to child-centered and child-friendly justice. Terre des Hommes' global initiative on justice with children is promoting a systemic approach to child participation, enabling children to influence reforms in a systemic and structural way. Now, the second aspect that I would like to mention today is on the need to focus on ensuring the empowerment of children in participating in strategic litigation for climate action. We have seen the work of children such as Greta, for example, but many others as well, in bringing the case of Saki et al. Against the Committee on the Rights of the Child. However, even today, several children, as we heard also from before, face many challenges in accessing legal remedies. Jurisdictions continue to require adult representatives to bring an action in the justice system. The current generation is certainly witnessing a change in narrative where children themselves are taking the front of the strategic actions. We move forward to build on this narrative further, using individual agency, capacity building, and access to legal aid and justice are crucial elements of legal empowerment. As mentioned before, meaningful participation of children is only enhanced by the systematic empowerment of children if challenges are properly addressed, such as working towards child-centered structures, taking the voices of children seriously. Children should not just be informed about their rights, but supported by families and communities to make their views heard in local and national decision-making structures, and support children and young people in peer-to-peer activities, and this to connect, learn, and mobilize together. Our role in Terre des Hommes in climate advocacy has so far very much been about supporting children to have their views heard by decision makers and building their knowledge and skills to adopt a child rights-based approach to climate advocacy. You have certainly heard about the global initiative on justice with children. It plays a crucial role positioning a contemporary agenda of child-centered justice at various levels by stimulating networking among a well-informed and trained community of practitioners, influencing legislation and policy, and empowering children in all its actions. It was launched on the 30th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, addresses most current issues concerning children in conflict with the law, such as digital justice, neuroscience and child justice, justice in crisis situation, detention, etc. Led by Terre des Hommes in partnership with Panel Reform International, the International Institute on Child Rights here in Switzerland, and the International Association of Youth and Family Judges and Magistrates. This global initiative on justice with children serves as a significant global milestone through its World Congress and advisory meetings connecting practitioners worldwide. By the way, the next Congress will be in 2025, introducing a new format which facilitates even further children's participation. I believe that meaningful and an effective child and youth participation and empowerment will form future responsible and serving leaders in our societies. What we have seen in the panel before, for me, these are our future leaders. And it is so obvious for me, and hopefully also for you, I'm sure, because we are the convinced ones here, that such leadership is so much required in the future, well, today, in the future, to face the current challenges we have. So let me finish my speech with the voice of Eni, who is a member of our Child and Youth Advisory Group. We should channel all our energies for more concrete actions and less abstract work, because children's voices count. And yes, Katharina, we will take you seriously. We have heard your call. However, I would like to extend that call to our political world leaders and the decision makers. They have everything in their hands to make the change that we all want to see, and that you engaged already in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I'm sure all of us, all people present here, were really inspired about you bringing how children are actively participating, the effects of climate change and climate injustice, how children are taking things into their hands, and the ending about the call to action. Thank you so much for understanding and for spreading, because I think that that's how change occurs. It comes from within and it goes spreading all around. And now, after we had all our panelists, we are going to transition to questions. We're going to have 2 questions from the moderators. So technically, I should be here co-moderating with my colleague, child advisor Doris. You probably saw her in the video. She is from Zambia, and she wasn't be able to join me today because of personal reasons. But she did brought a question, so I'm gonna ask my question, and then through a video, you're gonna see her asking her question. So basically what I would like to ask for, and after we ask, we're going to open questions for the floor as well. So now what I would like to know about you guys is, how can child activists who are affected by these issues be supported and empowered to be part of the change, but not be the only ones acting on it?
A member of a grassroots, I have worked with both parents and children. One of the major concerns is that children are often perceived as taking advantage of the fact that they have rights. My question is, how do we change the narrative around this issue of children's responsibility and avoid using against children's rights? And are there good practices in helping children and parents properly understand the relationship between children's rights and responsibilities? And how can we support parents and enable them with good parenting skills in a world where children have access to technology and defend human rights in the digital space?
So now you have the floor to answer, Ms. Barbara.
Thank you very much for this question. I'm sure there are several elements that we could mention. I think I would like to start with the one on the governance, which is a big word, you know, that how can we do it together? That is really the question you raised, you know, not that you are the only one, but that we are doing it together. I think at the governance level, there is a long way to go. I know there is some good examples like Child Rights Connect. I had a talk with Alex just at the beginning of the conference, and he shared with me the experience that they have 2 children in the board. We, Terre des Hommes, we don't have that yet, but it's on the agenda, on our list. I think, you know, to integrate young people, children into the governance system, that we really work together on also strategic issues and how can we bring the change into concrete action, to have the view of the children at that level as well heard and integrated. I think that is a very important part. And I think many organizations, I don't know all the boards of the organization, many don't have that yet, some have it. And if we want to be, you know, the example, I think we have to walk our own talk. We promote child participation and sharing and, you know, listening to the children. But I would like to see that also more and more at the governance level. So maybe I bring that in as a first answer.
Thank you so much.
Let me react as well. Of course, we can support and integrate more and more children in a variety of entities and processes. And we heard earlier this morning that there's a lot of mainstreaming going on even at the UN level. And all that is good. And no doubt that there are many children that are and will have make great contributions to all of the civil society organizations that are here today and much beyond. I would like to take a little bit of a side. Okay, I don't know if there are any signals here. Take a different tack. I think there's the children who are child rights defenders represent a spectrum of children. There are more staid, institutionally minded children who fit right in a very positive way to the organizations that already exist, understand the rules, the processes, know how to influence, who are perhaps politicians to be. But there are also what I call the rule breakers, the children who are at the other end of the spectrum, the ones that come up with intrepid, spontaneous, creative ways to change the narrative only for themselves to begin with, but that inspire others in addition to what they're doing. And I think we should not be fixated on just one end of the spectrum. Yes, as organizations, we're welcoming children, and they're absolutely extraordinary and inspiring. But let's not lose sight of those other children who every day amaze us, many times annoy us, but are also change makers. So that's my first reaction. The second point that I'd like to make is that it's difficult for adults to, how should I say it, be humble enough to sit down with children and accompany them in a meaningful way, or for many adults, I should say. It takes time, it takes efforts during long days that we have for all kinds of other tasks. It takes a different way of thinking as well. I don't think a young person or a child would last one day at a meeting of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. I mean, for them, it is incredibly boring. And some of them do come, but you can see that their eyes start to glaze over after about half an hour, probably seeing my own eyes glaze over after an hour or so. You have to think about different ways of conducting activities, and also imagine being able to play to construct knowledge, and the other way around. So how do we decenter ourselves sufficiently to think of different ways of doing business to capture the energy that we've been talking about together? And that's not to speak about the younger children. We're always concentrated, even in this room, on, I'd say, I can't remember exactly the ages, but 10 or 11 upwards in the video. But that's only half the children. 0 to 10 are also children. And here we adults need to find ways to be much more creative and capture their interests and their capacity to contribute as well. But just to end, I really do want to make a pitch for the rule breakers. If there's anything that defines childhood and adolescence, is seeing things differently. Or being capable of seeing things differently and discovering that the adults don't want you to see things differently. So how do we nurture that and be welcoming of that creativity? That's a challenge, I think, for everyone. Thank you. But I missed the second question, sorry.
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna reread the question, but as I think you all saw, it was a video that passed with Doris. It was really fast, but I'm gonna reread the question for all of you to hear it better. So she asked, as a member of a grassroots, I have worked with both children and parents. One of the major concerns is that children are often perceived as taking advantage of the fact that they have rights. My question is, how do we change the narrative around the issue of children's responsibility and avoid that is used against children's rights? Are there good practices in helping children and parents properly understand the relationship between children's rights and responsibility? And how can we support parents and enable them with good parenting skills in a world where children have a lot of access to technology and defend human rights in the digital space? So who would like to answer first?
Well, it's a much more difficult question than it appears at first. So the balance between members of this very unique entity, which is the family, the balance of responsibilities and the way the interactions are constructed has fascinated researchers for a long time. And obviously there's a hierarchy that is obvious and has been obvious. And in a way, if there is something that has been characterizing how families have evolved over the past 100 years or so, is a tendency towards more democratization. For sure, as far as women are concerned within family units, for sure in terms of roles of fathers and mothers, but also the way children have been acknowledged in a different way and have been able to express themselves, as in many families, certainly not all, and to have their voices heard as well. It's a laboratory that is where we would like children's rights to be fulfilled, certainly within the family. But at the same time, obviously, there's quite a bit of tension between this notion that children not only should be recognized for their rights, but we should never forget that they have responsibilities. I don't subscribe to this thought. I think that when we talk about human rights and children's human rights, you should end the sentence there. Women's rights do not come with responsibilities. Children's rights do not come with responsibilities, although everybody does exist in a collective sort of society or in which once you are recognized for your rights, you have perhaps a natural tendency to take on responsibilities in a more willing way. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that, of course, all this is colored by the fact that children are, quote unquote, under the responsibility of adults to fulfill a certain degree of development in the most optimum way. So again, there's a hierarchy that's introduced, and that parents have this, or families have this inherent role to try and provide the building blocks for children to bear a greater responsible place in society as they grow and develop. So I'm rambling a little bit because it's really the nature of the question that opens so many different avenues. But I'd just like to conclude, just coming back to the basic point. However, we want to look at families and society in which children are a huge component. I think we have to really focus on the most basic component of human rights, which is that every person in these entities have inherently all the rights that we subscribe to and that we all know and share. And then once you've acknowledged that and respected that and help everybody fulfill their rights, then you can move on to a different plane. So, but for now, our task as civil society, as other organizations, is to really make sure that those rights are respected and brought to full compliance. Sorry for the long answer.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Philip. Ms. Barbara, would you like to answer, or?
Well, maybe just to add, it is indeed complex. To add, I think we haven't spoken about the education system. And I think the education system, at least the one I know most, which is the one in Switzerland, but I think we can extend it to many other countries, are not necessarily built, first of all, on sensitizing and the children on their rights, and also empowering. I still believe there is a long way to go, that we in our education system, that the children are really empowered. Now, me as a parent, I navigated between my daughter has rights, and I sensitized her. And at the same time, I had sometimes the speech when she was a bit older, 15, 16 years old. Okay, this is now also about a responsibility of you, just to prepare her for the future. So I took that word into my mouth. And she appreciated that, I believe. I have to re-ask her again. But I think there is a lot to do still in our education system, but sensitizing on the child rights, on their rights, and really empower them. I just would like to take the opportunity to react what you said, Philip, before. We have still, yes, I think that there are various forums or forums that are really not encouraging that the children take the floor and are involved. I mean, the most boring, sorry to say so, events are still very close here in the building where our blue organizations are. And it's not only boring for children, it's also boring for us, how the design of events, by the way, interesting topics is made. And if we go a step further, and I think this is feasible, that children are at ease and involved, and it is interesting and fascinating and inspiring, even sometimes on technical issues, this can be done. But I don't see that it goes forward. Now you are sitting in the committee, Philip, you can bring that change, and build that committee differently, design it differently, so that the children really feel, engaged and can come in and participate. So sorry, I put a bit of pressure on you here.
Well, thank you for the answers. As we said, action happens slowly, and I think this is a place where change may occur and may rise. But now, due to time constraints, I said we were gonna take 3 questions from the floor. We're actually just taking one. So we're gonna see who has a question, and I'll also ask the panelists, if possible, to answer these questions with the closing remarks. So does anyone have a question? It's important to point that we're gonna give preference to people here present. So I don't think we're gonna possibly be able to take questions from Zoom. But I'm certain that there are going to be other opportunities through live to talk and debate these issues.
Yes, and we can answer the questions in the chat in writing.
Yes, as well. So who has a question? We have 2 questions. I choose.
Tough choice.
Okay.
Let's have both.
Yeah,
if it's quickly, it's okay.
Thank you so much, Maria Lucia Uribe from Arigato International, and thank you for this very insightful panel. I want to I have a question regarding to a sentence that you mentioned, Philip, government's apathy with this child revolution. And you have discussed several issues when it comes to this backlash in terms of child rights, the access to remedies and the lack of information, children not being treated as, you know, someone who can contribute and so on. And I would like to ask the children in the room, how have you felt the government's apathy in your work? How does it affect you? And maybe from the adults and the panelists, how is it being seen in the work you do? Are we seeing this lack of apathy in increasing numbers in terms of governments? And if there is any recommendation on what we can do together to address this, what else do we need to redouble in our efforts to counteract that fact? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who would like to? I think we're. Who?
We can listen to. It's very different. Perhaps we can address it at another panel. Okay.
Oh, is it long? Oh.
Thank you, Maria Lucia.
Let
Should I start? Yeah, and brief, right? Yeah. Thank you for the long question. Look, in very short, it depends where in the world, and the equation is rather simple. States where civil society is strong is where everybody's rights are more are listened to a larger degree, and apathy is reduced. But never forget that children are not in power in any country, and governments tend to look after the people who have kept and put them in power and keep them in power. So again, I think it's a challenge to civil society mainly. And when I say civil society, I of course include child-led movements to change this narrative. I'm not sure it's going to change rapidly. I think that if anything, the COVID crisis has showed 2 things to the world. A, that global governance and governments were completely lost and unable to manage in an efficient way. And that the main preoccupation that came out of it was economic and not human oriented. It was more in terms of how do we get the economic machine going again. So I'm not really that hopeful, but so if I can go to my closing remarks and to respond to the accusation that the UN is a boring place. It is all the opposite. among all the boring people and boring meetings that we have, there are so many exciting ideas that are being debated by so many smart, intelligent, and committed people. And I think you all know that. And to give you a very current example, you will soon be graced by a very, very boring document, which is General Comment 26 on children's rights and the environment. It's a typical UN document, but there are so many exciting things in there. And so please read it carefully, spend a couple of hours. Don't think that it should be ripped up. This is where a lot of inspiration can come for the environmental defenders and other child rights defenders. So it's a matter of being charitable and being in solidarity with us committee members who have to deal with many long sessions. But yeah, I wouldn't mind having some children in the committee. There's no lower age for membership. So if there is a government that would like to put forward a child, why not? I also coming back from Nairobi and the Child African Summit was inspired by something that I think we should introduce in our committee, and we have the talent. Before any meeting, there was a lot of dancing. And that was a great aspect of the summit, is that before all the boring speeches, at least we got to dance. It also revealed that I don't know how to dance, but that's and that Najat is a great dancer. But in the committee, we also have some really talented dancers, and I think we should have thought about this for today as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip, and for bringing forward the comment 26. Well, let's read it and hopefully find the best ways to implement it. And now, Ms. Barbara, if you can answer with your closing remarks.
I will
please.
only
Thank
do
you.
the closing remarks. By the way, we're gonna read the report. Don't worry, and I haven't said it is not, it is boring. It's how the design is done. That is really the issue, just to clarify. I think I close very rapidly because we have a time issue, but it's also how I am. I will continue with all of you here sitting in the room, but also online and all those who are not here, to advocate together with the children for the respect of their rights. I think we have to increase our advocacy work, especially what I said in my speech, so that the world leaders, the decision makers, take our and the children's consideration seriously into their policies and strategies. So this is my dream, that one day we would not sit here together anymore, because there is no need for this anymore, as it has become just a normal practice. So thank you very much again for this panel, and I wish us all an inspiring day.
Thank you so much. And now we the director would like to say some words. He has an announcement before the end. Okay.
Just a short. Okay, I'm very sorry. No, I interrupted before. So you make your closing remarks, then I'll do some housekeeping.
So before we have the housekeeping, I just want to end the panel once again, thanking the panelists for bringing their dreams and important points related to the anti-child rights rhetoric. And I want to finalize saying that for change, at least I believe that change comes when we get out of our comfort zone. And so I think that after we heard about the issues of the anti-child rights rhetoric and solutions behind it, I want to call you all to get out of your comfort zone and also participate of this change. Now the panel has ended. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for an amazing panel, for your attention. Just a small housekeeping matter. We break now for coffee. Those of you online, I hope you're able to also take a break. We will start again with parallel working groups at 11:30. For those of you that are here in person and will be in room 2-3 with working group 1, please bear in mind that we will be joined by child human rights defenders from Bulgaria online. So assuming that not many of you are fluent in that language, get your headsets when you go to room 2-3 so that you are ready to listen to the interpretation. And otherwise, thank you very much for this first wonderful first panel, and enjoy the coffee break. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this conference, Mr. Volker Türk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Even before taking up his post as High Commissioner in October last year, we have seen a commitment from him to child rights. As Under Secretary General for Policy in the Executive Office of the UN Secretary General, he was responsible for ensuring the UN system-wide coordination in the follow-up to the Secretary General's call to action for human rights. And his report, Our Common Agenda. It's not coincidence that in response to the Child Rights Connect position paper on the Common Agenda report, the Secretary General directed the development of a Secretary General's guidance note to the UN on child rights mainstreaming across the UN system. There is no doubt that this will have an enormous impact on and for children and for the child rights movement. We thank you, High Commissioner, for the role you played in making this important step happen. And of course, we are also hoping that we will work together in the future as well. We are delighted that the High Commissioner has continued to be receptive to child rights issues in his current role. I know that he will reflect on some aspects on this in his address, and it is therefore my pleasure to give the floor to you, Mr. High Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and it's great to be here today and to have a chance also to engage with you. I know, unfortunately, my time has been a bit limited, and I'm very sorry for that, but at least I wanted to really come in person and come here and really thank you very much, but also Child Rights Connect for all the work that you are doing, and actually 40 years of commitment to child rights and to working on these issues is really amazing. And we are really very grateful on behalf of my office also for all the long-standing collaboration that we have with yourselves. I'm also delighted to see quite a few children in the room, so that's great. And we are actually talking about you, and we should never talk about you without you. And I think that's, again, very important principle when it comes to talking about child rights. And your voices are very important. And that's really what child rights are also about. And when you mentioned the rights of children, they are part and parcel, obviously, of the bigger human rights movement. And it's really important that we have a chance to focus on it, but also not least this year when we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I will talk a little bit about this. So I have a prepared speech, so I will elaborate a bit on what I have, because you also asked for a number of ideas from my office, and I will obviously want to contribute to this debate very much. So this conference, as I understand it, is also very much about changing the narrative on children's rights. And if we want to change the narrative, we need to change the narrator, meaning children telling their own stories. I think that's really the starting point. As I said, nothing about us without us. I mean, that comes actually from another human rights movement, the disability rights movement, but it's something that applies actually throughout the whole spectrum of human rights. We know that when children enjoy their rights, they can envision a better future. And the quest for rights and freedoms for all children is not the responsibility of children alone. We all need to accompany you and children on their journey. So policymakers need to listen actively and they must act urgently. And I think that's really key. We have seen over the last decade some really important transformational changes in child rights. Of course, big thing, adoption of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's actually the most ratified legal human rights convention in history. And it's a critical turning point. I still remember it. I wasn't a child at the time, I was a young person, but I remember when it was adopted. And I remember how, in fact, I had a chance to talk to some children at the time and try to explain to them, what does this mean to actually talk about rights of children, especially with some of the fundamental principles behind it, the best interest principle. We have had, as a result, not least of this convention, hundreds of millions of children who have gained better access to healthcare, better access to education as a result of it, so that they can all, and also that children can participate more freely in discussions that affect their lives and their futures. Because there was a little bit that mentality of, we decide for you, rather than we want to listen to you and involve you in a participatory way in the decisions that affect your lives. That's the best interest of the child principle, not least. I mean, we have seen that this progress has been rapid because of that convention. It has also been universal. It really covers each and every continent, each and every country in the world. But it's also true that the rights in the convention are in some parts of the climate change, poverty, also the wars, and frankly, also the lingering impacts of COVID-19. And I've had a chance to discuss with many children how they felt during that period. And some of them, my own relatives, often told me how much they felt that somehow their life has been so reduced and they couldn't really benefit from access to education in the way that they should. In some countries in the world, this has even been worse. Some of the schools were totally closed. They couldn't have access to schooling. We also know that children, and I'm sure many of you in the room, are incredible, powerful champions of change. And that's amazing. You are often leading when it comes to climate change and the fight for climate change. In fact, I know that some of the things that have happened as a result of your activities would not have been possible. And so don't underestimate the political force that you have, because the Friday for Future movement was a children's movement. And it's a movement that I remember even in New York at the time, with one of the climate summits that we had, when we had children and young people participate in it, it was that powerful voice that actually triggered the changes. So don't underestimate the power that you have. But you're also very strong on violence against women and girls. You are demanding the rights of all people to love who they choose, no matter their gender. So your voices are not just contributing to policy, you're shaping it. But we also have countries where children are excluded from decisions that have an impact on their lives, despite the fact that the Convention on the Rights of the Child is very clear about it. So how do we deal with that gap and with that tension? So we need to always come back to human rights law and to human rights standards. And we know how some of the child rights defenders around the world can face sometimes very serious consequences, because like many human rights defenders, but also child rights defenders, because their opinions may be disregarded, they may even be dismissed. Some may face punishments and threats and violence and disappearances and even execution. The Committee on the Rights of the Child, which is the treaty body that deals with the implementation of the Child Rights Convention, has said that countries must ensure that child human rights defenders have access to child-friendly complaint mechanisms so that they can tell people when there are problems. And again, that's very important to have child-friendly complaint mechanisms in place. But many countries don't actually have these mechanisms in place. So we need to really push for them. Because we know that children often do face problems when it comes to accessing justice systems, courts, because not many lawyers are often trained in justice issues when it comes to children's rights. In fact, I remember 2015, during the crisis that Europe faced, the issues of refugees and migrants coming from different parts of the world. There were a lot of children among them, a lot of unaccompanied and separated children. And a lot of countries told us that they discovered that their own child protection systems hadn't really worked. They only discovered this when there was a shock to the system. So it actually had the impact that countries were then faced with the situation, well, we have to review our child protection systems because despite the fact that we think we have been so good, and that's Europe, we are realizing that we are not that good. And it really came back to these child complaints mechanisms and how to make a child-friendly way of how the state interacts with children. And that's a very important lesson that we have learned. There is this famous UN guidance note on child rights mainstreaming that you mentioned, which we hope we will be able to adopt very soon. I think the idea is now July, and I think it will hopefully have a big impact among the different UN agencies about ensuring that there is child rights mainstreaming. And that sounds, I guess, for children a little bit strange. What does child rights mainstreaming mean? What it means is that in each and every activity of what the UN does on the ground, they will have to take into account the particular special situation of children from the perspective of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we hope, again, this will be really important. We also know that in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, that the child rights agenda is important because it strengthens the accountability to children. And I thank really Child Rights Connect and your members for all the powerful advocacy that you have done to make sure that this process and these decisions move ahead. And we really know that this guidance note, it sounds like it's a document, but it's an important document. It's part of a really bigger process where we try very much to push for the recommendations that you have often worked over many years and that will finally find its expression in a clear guidance to the UN system. We are also, by the way, preparing a report for the Human Rights Council early next year on how we can strengthen child rights mainstreaming within the system, but also the broad ecosystem of the human rights framework. Well, as we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which, by the way, was a document that was developed after two huge tragedies in Europe. And sometimes for you as children in particular, it's important to bear in mind the history of where these documents have come from. Because history helps us a lot to think about the time when this document was drafted. And it was a very difficult time in the history of mankind, of humankind. And it's a document that really gave people hope to change, to transform, to inspire, to motivate, to energize. When I was a child, I was 15 years old when I first read that document. It really inspired me. It influenced my life. I still remember the moment when I read that document. So I can only recommend to you, read it and study it and embrace it, because it is what gives us a vision for the future that is very different. And I can only hope that it leads you to a spirit of change, of transformation that we all need. We are working on making sure that we take into account much more the voices of children, and we will continue to work in particular with Child Rights Connect, but many other partners as well, particular to focus on child rights defenders through focus group discussions. And we also want to use this in the course of this year in the context of this anniversary, because we want to make sure that the voices of children have an impact on the type of things that we are doing for the anniversary preparations that are continuing. And it will be good to, we will also do a survey, by the way. And we hope very much that we will have child rights, human rights defenders come to our big event at the end of the year, 11th and 12th December, so that we can celebrate this as well. I will make sure that, and I'm committed to this, that the voices of children and of young people will be reflected in my office's vision statement for human rights, which is a key outcome document at the end of the year, but it will also guide our organizational, which is, again, sorry to be bureaucratic, a bureaucratic document, an organizational management plan for the next 4 years. We know that children represent our future. We know that your freshness, your curiosity about life is something that can guide us and help us, and also in a way give us the hope that we can work on a lot of these challenges together, and you are absolutely critical to this. And as I said, let's also think about all those children who challenge injustice, who fight for the rights of others, who raise their voices for those who cannot, and who hold governments to account. So I would like in particular the children here present around the world who are doing this type of work to pay tribute to you and to what you're doing. And you're doing it not just for yourselves and for the future, but you're also doing it for those of us who have been on this fight for quite some time. And without your energy and without your vision and without your inspiration, without your new ideas, we wouldn't be able to do it. So big thanks to all of you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner, for your very kind and very promising words on the future and the coming future. And I would like to ask now you to answer a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I hope you will still have a little bit of time for us. So may I ask those who would like to come forward and ask the questions? Yes, Fran, would you like to start? Sorry.
Mr. Commissioner, my name is Fran. I'm 15 years old and I'm from Croatia. And my question for you is, do you take children's participation into consideration when writing new strategies? And also, how do you take children's involvement and activism in the work of the UN?
Yeah. Hello. First of all, thanks for joining us today. My name is Angelina. I'm 16 years old. I'm from Moldova. And I have a question. How can the international community better support and protect child rights defenders in their crucial work, especially the ones with special needs and from rural areas, considering the various challenges they face, including threats, harassment, limited access to capacity building, and restrictions, in order to ensure the promotion and safeguarding of children's rights worldwide?
Thank you. I'm Catarina. And as a 16-year-old Brazilian youth who watches children in her country suffer from lack of proper basic public education, where security issues are so bad to the point where it isn't safe for women to walk alone on the streets, and where people who have more financial resources and consequently have the opportunity to get a higher level education choose to destroy basic resources such as native forests and choose to contribute to the violation of children's rights. I would like to ask, what are the missing key actions that should be taken for purposeful change to start occurring? And how can young activists like me be involved in this change? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for these questions. They're important ones. They're critical ones. When it comes to children's participation, I mean, in the preparations that we have this year for the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we want to send out a survey. And I think we will also collaborate very much with Child Rights Connect, but also with others to actually have your voice in what this means, this anniversary of this text of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and to get also your ideas. We hope that we are committed to making sure that participation of children, as we go forward and as we look at the next couple of years, and as we plan, especially for some of the big issues of the future, that we will involve you meaningfully. And I think we can certainly do it. I can do it for my institution, for the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We have had some attempts in the Council, in the Human Rights Council, which is a member state body, to also involve children more. But we will make sure that we push wherever we can that children can participate. So it will be a big emphasis for us. And we hope also through this guidance note that I mentioned on child rights mainstreaming, that this will be the new way of working. And that's going to be very important. I agree with you that in rural areas, so, you know, when we talk about children, and you are children, you have asked it, I mean, even just listening to you, we know that each and every aspect, yes, sorry, we also, thanks for reminding, we will have, I will go next month to Vienna. And we will have 40 child and youth human rights defenders on the 5th of June at a conference that is dedicated to child and youth human rights defenders at risk, which is, by the way, convened by the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders. And I will be at that conference as well, just to mention, I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me. Look, on children and what you mentioned on rural areas and other way, I mean, there is not, I mean, if we talk about children, we always have to think about the richness and diversity of children, right? I mean, those living in rural areas, those living with disabilities, the LGBTIQ plus community, those who face, as you have mentioned, also often violence, I mean, or violent environments. So it's really important, and that's what is so critical for institutions of the state, for NGOs also to understand, and that's why the work on child rights mainstreaming is so important, that we are not just looking at children as one mass without even identifying that there is a huge richness and diversity behind it, and that we are aware of the different needs, of the different special concerns, aspirations, wishes of all of you, and we need to find ways and means to respond to it. So often it's focus group discussions that help us bring this out with, you know, different ages. You know, we sometimes have this approach, which we call age gender diversity, so that we really capture, for instance, when the United Nations has a humanitarian program, that they know that there are different needs, different aspirations, different rights, depending on the age group, depending on your background, depending on where you live. And I think that's a really key, and it's actually a key element of this child rights mainstreaming that I mentioned earlier, because otherwise we are not going to be able to deliver to what you need. And yes, and I think the activity, I mean, what you mentioned, I think also the story that you're saying, that you're telling, is an important one. It's also important that those, which is often the state, is aware of the need to know exactly what it means, child protection. Sometimes they look at it from the lens of an adult. Sometimes the police looks at it from the lens of an adult. Sometimes the judiciary or you know, the big institutions of the state, sometimes those who provide basic services. So we are constantly trying to push them to understand there has to be a child, there has to be a child appropriate form of communication. There has to be a child friendliness. There has to be an understanding of not just the needs and the rights of children, but also how to deal with it. And they are not going to be able to do it if they're not interacting with children. So it's good for all of this to be done, not just for the UN, but frankly, for this child rights mainstreaming to be done for all the institutions of the state that are there to protect us. Sometimes in some countries, the impression is given that we have to serve the state, that citizens or children or youth or also older people have to serve the state, but it's actually the other way around. It's the institutions of the state that have to serve us, and they have to serve everyone. And I think that's the importance when it comes also to bringing awareness, your awareness to them so that they understand how they can help and protect you, but also give you the space to be creative and to push for things and to also make sure that your concerns are heard and listened to by them. Voila. Thank you very much. Looking forward to more exchanges and also in the context of this year, but obviously in the years to come.
Thank you very much, Mr. High Commissioner. And we also hope that if in any way we can be of help, both adults and children, you will rely on us to achieve your goals. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you. And we wish you all the success in your activities. So I'm sorry to to be here on the side. I didn't want to sit in any of those places, but I guess it's an equally important place to speak from here. So it's my pleasure to make some introductions ahead of the opening remarks for the afternoon's panel. This panel, looking at the question of leveraging UN mechanisms and agencies to respond to challenges for the child rights movement, is hosted by Iceland. Child Rights Connect has embarked on a special partnership with Iceland to support and further enhance a child rights approach within and by Iceland. Against that background, we are delighted to be joined by Iceland's Minister of Education and Children, Mr. Asmundur Einar Daðason. The minister is a distinguished Icelandic politician with a strong commitment to education and child welfare. He has been instrumental in shaping policies and initiatives to promote quality education and ensure the well-being of children in Iceland. In opening this afternoon's panel, the minister is joined by Tostur, a child advisor in Child Rights Connect Children's Advisory Team, who himself comes from Iceland. And with this, I give the floor back as a moderator to Gloria. And Minister and Tostur, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator, ladies and gentlemen, fellow advocates for children's rights. I must say in the beginning, it's an honor to be here with you today to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Child Rights Connect and take part in a conversation so close to my heart. The human rights and well-being of children. Children, the most important human being walking on the earth. On behalf of the Icelandic government, I would also like to congratulate Child Rights Connect on this impressive event, as well as on reaching the milestone of celebrating 40 years of tireless dedication to protecting and promoting child rights. Learning about and witnessing your organization's significant impact worldwide is very inspiring. Your commitment has truly transformed lives and nurtured generations of individuals passionate about safeguarding the rights of every child. And children are the cornerstones of our society, and their well-being and development need to be at the forefront of all our priorities. However, we face complex challenges such as conflicts, displacement, poverty, attacks on democracy, backlash against universal human rights, increased anti-child speech, and emerging global pandemics that this pandemics, this commitment needs to be stronger than ever before. During times like these, governments and politicians like myself, international organizations, NGOs, and children need to work hand in hand to safeguard the rights and dignity of every child. And we need to think of new ways and initiatives how to do that. And this was the formal words, but I want to say a few informal words as well. I'm not an international expert. I became a minister in 2017, passionate and wanted to focus exclusively on children's rights, children's well-being in my ministerial mandate. I'm so fortunate to be able to renew that in last election. So now I have 2.5 more years of doing what I love. We are here to discuss UN child rights mechanisms and how they can play child rights and play important role in child rights and well-being. And I was thinking when I was preparing this speech, what would you want to hear from a minister from Iceland when it comes to this? I'm not a specialist. You are the specialist. The children are the specialists. We have educated specialists here in the room as well. But I have figured out on our journey in Iceland that we have worked a lot with international organizations. We have worked a lot with UNICEF, both UNICEF Iceland, UNICEF worldwide on initiatives. We have worked with different UN bodies. For example, one who spoke here earlier, Nashyatma Al-Majid, who is UN General Special Representative on Violence Against Children. We have used the CRC, the Committee on the Right of the Child, the reviews there. We are using them quite intensively of how we can change what we are doing. We are working with Child Rights Connect, which was mentioned here earlier. But there are three things that I want to take and leave here in the room before we start. First is what I think is that we have to somehow try to change is how we can include governments and politics within each country more than we are doing both in development and implementation of international conventions and initiatives that bring to human rights and children rights. We have been trying to do that in Iceland. For example, when we were preparing for the Committee on the Rights of the Child, we include all ministries, we include the municipalities, we include the children themselves. And we have to get more people involved, and that brings more commitment and accountability to each sector. Everyone feels like they are on a board of a journey. And what we see if we do that as well, that I have sensed that even some government officials that you wouldn't suggest would be activists, they become activists if you include them in such thinking. And that brings me to the second point, which is, how can we empower civil society, NGO, organization, and grassroots more than we are doing today? And when I say empower them, I'm not talking about supporting them, because we are supporting them. Governments are supporting NGOs in a different way. And I'm not talking about joining them, but I'm also talking about letting them join us. And now I'm speaking as a minister from a government, because there's a big difference of empowering someone and supporting them and actually letting them join what we are doing. I've been in 2 ministries, and the recommendation that I have got when I come into the ministry is, and I'm of course going a little bit overboard, is not talk to the NGOs. We make decisions here, and then after we have made decisions, we ask them for a review. And I wanted to include them in everything that we are doing. And what we did actually is, for example, now in the ministry, for example, the division of migrant children, the division of youth policy and child rights, even the permanent secretary of the ministry, all have backgrounds in grassroots organizations. And we kind of stole them from there to bring them into the ministry. And what happens then is that this This brings the activist ideology into the ministry, into the governance, how we govern and how we make policies. And we take more progressive steps if we listen to the grassroots. And what we have to do is to empower politicians to do that, because they are afraid to do it, because they are afraid to share the power. And thirdly, an important thing, and the most important one, is to bring those on board that you're working for, and that are the children themselves. And we have done that. In lots of ways we've been doing. For example, in the initiative we are working with the Child Rights Connect. But also one thing I like to mention: for a year ago we had a violence wave in the upper secondary schools in Iceland. Sexual harassment and different, and there was demonstration and within the upper secondary schools, and I asked them to come and meet with us, and I said, what do you want to do? We want to be part of making reforms. We want to be part of making a strategy in the ministry. And I said to them, okay, you want to have the lead? Let's arrange a meeting like this where you have the principals, where you have the chair of the student unions, and the staff of the ministry will be working as secretaries on the tables. And the principals requested a meeting immediately and saying to the ministry, what are you doing? Why are you including them in what we are doing? But we had an amazing meeting like this one. And they are coming together up with a strategy and a plan of how we're going to tackle this. And this is the way of bringing the NGOs, bringing the youth in front of the decision making, but not after. And by ending on this important thing of having the youth on board, I will give the floor to Thruster, who is a youth council member and a representative from Iceland, who is a part of Global Youth Council of Child Rights Connect. The floor is yours, Thruster.
In Iceland, I am an advocate for children's rights. I have been active in that field since about 2 years ago, when I started getting involved with the different youth councils in Iceland. I'm currently a member of a few youth councils. For example, the Child Rights Connect Children's Advisory Team, the Icelandic Sustainable Development Goals Youth Council, the UNICEF Youth Council in Iceland, and the Reykjavik Municipality Youth Council. I'm a child human rights defender, and in Iceland, I feel I have many opportunities to learn about my rights and to voice my opinion. The schools in Iceland can be a good platform to debate human rights. Most schools in the country teach their students about the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and student participation is highly appreciated and encouraged in primary schools in the country. What is most important, I believe, is that those making decisions in the schools do listen to the opinion of the students and often take it seriously. I can think of several examples where the students have managed to influence decisions about their school environment. Students have sometimes been able to change the daily menu in the canteen and the selection of optional courses for students. Of course, this is very important, as the schools are where we children and young people spend so much of our time for so many years. They must be a place where we can feel good and be respected. I have never been afraid to speak my mind. I have always been very vocal about my opinions on things I find to be important or about things I feel have to be changed. In my experience, the school has always given me a platform to speak out and make a difference, especially since I started working in the youth councils, and I understand better the value of my own voice and how to express what matters to me. Of course, it varies between schools how much influence the students can have. However, all children do have access to support through different websites and organizations. The Ombudsperson for Children in Iceland has an online forum where children can ask questions anonymously. Lawyers or experts within the office of the Ombudsperson will then answer the question, and the answer appears online. Knowledge is power, and for children to have an easy access to a professional in this way can be very useful. Nowadays, more youth councils and children councils are being formed in Iceland. At the moment, the law encourages all municipalities to have a special youth council. Minister Ásmundur is putting emphasis on making sure that this is done all around the country, and I believe he wants this to be done properly. Some municipalities even pay children and young people for participating in their youth councils. In Iceland, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child was turned into law in 2013. Therefore, the government needs to make sure that it's being upheld. Despite the Icelandic school system being good in many ways, we still see some important areas which can be improved. I will mention, for example, the lack of mental health support at school and the limited capacity which the schools have to meet the special needs of some students, such as children with disabilities. We keep hearing that we, the children, will inherit the earth. If that is the case, we would certainly appreciate it if the adults of today felt the same sense of duty to protect the earth. In my role as a member of the Sustainable Development Goals Youth Council in Iceland, I recently had the opportunity to meet with the Icelandic government, Minister Ásmundur here included. The 12 of us in the Youth Council had been working on recommendations which we introduced to the government at a small event. Our main themes were human rights, education, and environment. These are the three issues we in the Youth Council feel are the most crucial for young and, in fact, all people. Human rights are connected to everything else in this field. We need to make sure that our rights as children are respected. At this Sustainable Development Goals event, many of the ministers of government showed up and listened to our recommendations. They then gave short feedback to our presentation, and there was a short debate in the end. The ministers received recommendations that applied to their specific ministries. The Prime Minister of Iceland, Ms. Katrín Jakobsdóttir, used the opportunity to consult us on other affairs. She asked us about the growing tendency of children in Iceland using weapons and how we would recommend the government to deal with that, among other things. The Prime Minister then showed an interest in discussing this further with us at a later stage. It was quite empowering for us in the Sustainable Development Goals Youth Council to stand there and share our opinion face to face with the leaders of our country. They seemed to be open to our ideas and interested in what we had to say. This kind of debate between children and leaders is important for a country that respects children's rights and aims to lift them up. I hope we will have more such events in the future and that they yield some concrete results. I would also like to tell you about another exciting project. 2 weeks ago, I was one of 3 children that co-facilitated a conference in the north of Iceland where over 40 children, aged 13 to 15 years old, came together to discuss the concluding observations of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. These observations were presented to Iceland last year as a follow-up to the committee's review of the status of children's rights in Iceland. The conference was held by the Ministry of Education and Children in Iceland and was very interesting to be a part of it. The results of the conference reflected Iceland's children's views on what should be prioritized from the concluding observations of the committee. These results of the children's conference will then be delivered to the minister for him to work on. The conference was a part of a joint project between the Icelandic government and Child Rights Connect, and the aim of the project is to design a tool which other countries may find useful. In particular, on how to include children in the process of implementing the concluding observations. Now, I'm thankful for all the opportunities I have to influence decision-making, and Iceland is doing a lot of things quite well. There is one thing I'm sure we could do a whole lot better. We should include more children and young people from different ethnic backgrounds in our youth work. In my experience, almost all of the children that participate in the Icelandic youth councils are born and raised in the country, but there are a lot of children in Iceland with a different ethnic backgrounds who do not participate in them. In some municipalities, almost half the inhabitants have different ethnic backgrounds. For a country that scores so high in all international comparisons, when it comes to equality, we should focus on this group and give all children in Iceland the opportunity to voice their opinion. To conclude, I am very fortunate to have been born in a country where children's rights are respected and upheld, and where children have real opportunities to speak their mind. I hope all of us in this room will be fortunate enough to extend those rights for the benefit of children in all countries in the world. Thank you.
So I really want to thank Trustu and Mr. Minister for their interesting presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, wish you all a very good day. On the behalf of Child Rights Connect, allow me to extend a warm welcome to you all in this panel discussion. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Gloria. I'm delighted to be the moderator of this interesting session. You know, UN mechanism and agency play a crucial role in advancing child rights and can be leveraged to respond to the challenges faced by child rights movement. Basically, there are 2 key challenges that exist in this regard. The first concern the lack of awareness of child rights, and the other challenges concern the complexity of the UN system and the way that various parts of its function and interrelate. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce you these amazing speakers we have. So in addition to Mr. Minister and Trusteau, we have Catherine Roussel, who is the Executive Director of UNICEF, Anne Skelton, who is the Chair of Child Rights Committee, and Mary Lawlor, who is the UN Special Reporter on the Situation of Human Rights Defenders. And her colleague also Todd, who is with us to respond to your question, and Michelle Foss, who is the Special Reporter on the Environmental Defenders. So now, the first panelist is Catherine Roussel, who serves as the UNICEF executor, overseeing the organization working for children in over 190 countries and terrorists. She was appointed to the role by the UN Secretary General on the 1st February 2022. Her work has focused on empowering underserved communities around the world and developing high-impact policies and programs to support women and girls, including humanitarian crisis. So she will talk about the UNICEF responses to the regression of national laws and standard on child rights in her video statement. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you to Child Rights Connect for bringing us together for this critical exchange of ideas on how we can elevate the child rights agenda. And thank you especially to the children and young people who are participating in today's conference. Since its adoption in 1989, the Convention on the Rights of the Child has become the most ratified international human rights treaty in history. It has delivered transformative changes for children across the world, with millions having improved access to healthcare, protection, education, and participation as full members of their communities. Despite the tremendous impact of the Convention, the rights of children are under threat. Today, children across the globe are facing a confluence of intractable crises, from armed conflicts and the devastating consequences of climate change to persistent inequality and the ongoing socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic. And if these weren't enough, the very legitimacy of child rights is increasingly being called into question. The pushback against child rights is occurring in intergovernmental fora, including at the General Assembly and Human Rights Council. And it's happening at the country level, with some lawmakers seeking to prioritize parental rights and the interests of the family at the expense of the rights of children and women. We are also seeing efforts to undermine the integrity of international and national standards pertaining to children. Children's rights that are perceived as challenging patriarchal structures and gender norms and parental authority are at heightened risk. These include civil and political rights, reproductive and sexual health rights, the right to be protected against domestic violence, and the rights of LGBTQI+ children. In some countries, governments are working to roll back laws, policies, and plans that address domestic and gender-based violence, as well as those that promote gender equality and diversity. These efforts are often accompanied by hate speech, disinformation, threats against human rights defenders, and democratic retreat. Such deliberate attempts to undermine child rights are not new, but they are intensifying, and we must do everything we can to ensure the rights of all children are respected, fulfilled, and protected. Child rights advocacy is central to UNICEF's work and is at the core of our mandate. UNICEF country offices and national committees are working to promote and support the alignment of national legal frameworks with the Convention on the Rights of the Child and other international standards. And we've developed an online tool to guide child rights legislative reform with the University of Leiden that will be launched next month. But given the current context, we must do more. The child rights community should adopt a common discourse to reinforce the primacy of children's rights, and we should rally behind a shared set of messages. These include reaffirming children's status as rights holders independently from their parents, that they constitute a group of distinct rights holders under international law, that there must be accountability for violations of children's rights, and that the CRC still provides a framework to fulfill, protect, and respect child rights. Together, we can seize the opportunities of the 75th anniversary of the UDHR this year and the Summit of the Future next year to advance this concerted advocacy. And you can always count on UNICEF as a steadfast partner in championing the child rights agenda.
So thank you, Catherine. This was an interesting presentation. So like I'm going to the next speaker is Anne Skelton, who is the new chair of Child Rights Committee. So Anne Skelton is a highly respected expert in the field of children's rights and serves as a member and current chair of UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, with extensive experience and expertise in child law and policy. Professor Skelton has made significant contributions to the advancement of child rights globally. So her presentation is about what can and will the Child Rights Committee do to support responses to the pushback against the child rights movement. Mrs. Skelton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gloria. A pushback against the pushbacks. That is what the Committee on the Rights of the Child can contribute to, together with many other partners. It seems as though this is an important moment to remind everybody about what children's rights is really all about and what the Convention of the Rights of the Child was meant to achieve. The work along that line has been going on for many years, but I think it is time for an intensification and that there's more that the committee can and will do. So let me just spell out a few further steps that I think the committee can play a role in. First of all, we can clarify the meaning of Article 5 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This was mentioned by the previous speaker, Catherine Russell, when she talked about the fact that there's a kind of burgeoning of family values that is being used as a way of overshadowing children's rights. In other words, there is a position taken by some states in the Human Rights Council and in the General Assembly when declarations are being drafted on children's rights to say children belong in families, parental guidance is very important. So Article 5 does talk about appropriate direction and guidance. It says that parents will, let me just find the right wording, it will provide in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child, appropriate direction and guidance in the exercise by the child of the rights recognized in the present convention. So all of those words are important: evolving capacity, exercising the rights of the child. But what's starting to happen is that the words appropriate direction and guidance are looming too large in Article 5. So the job is to get a full understanding of what Article 5 was meant to mean. And I think the Committee on the Rights of the Child is engaging on work towards putting out a declaratory statement on our understanding at the committee of this article. Secondly, and it's linked to that, is reminding states about the fact that children are rights holders. In other words, not seeing children as beneficiaries at some end point of children's rights, but actually being rights holders in the same way that adults are rights holders. Even babies are rights holders, and we need to somehow get states to fully engage with this rather obvious idea if you work in children's rights, but not everyone sees it as obvious. And we also need to remind states that direction and guidance by families should be a positive and enabling process and should actually assist children in growing up to be responsible adults and to participate in society. That's what that direction and guidance is meant to be aimed at, because it's linked to the exercise of rights. And it's not about stifling children's opinions and telling them to behave and keep quiet. That is not appropriate direction and guidance. So we've got to get the balance back on all of these. And we certainly want to see that as children's capacity develops, then their views must be given greater and greater weight. So those, as I say, in many ways, these are very obvious things. It's quite strange that we're having to re-explain them, but it seems as though we do need to do that. Another area where the committee can and will push back against the pushback is to continue to express its deep concern about the shrinking space for civil society. Because what we're hearing
in our pre-sessional working groups, when we hear from NGOs and we hear from children, is that it's getting harder and harder on the ground to speak your mind, to actually stand up for your own rights and for the rights of the children that you work with. And this shrinking space is leading to a weakening at the national level of civil society work, which is so crucial. So we can call out states, and we do call out states that are creating a shrinking environment, and we can insist that states should allow people working with and for children and children themselves to be able to undertake the work that they do in an empowering environment. And the committee can also pay increased attention to civil and political rights of children. There's been something of it's been a big focus on Article 12, the children's right to be heard. And I think there's a full understanding of children's socioeconomic rights, but somehow Articles 13, 14, and 15, which deal with the rights to freedom of expression, freedom of association, and freedom for peaceful assembly, these rights have been somewhat skimmed over and need further development. So again, the committee is already asking more questions relating to these articles, and we will continue to play that role in the future. Also within this, of course, the committee will continue to speak out strongly about the rights of children as human rights defenders. And here we'll be building on the work done in the past with Child Rights Connect, using their toolkit on children as human rights defenders. And I think we've seen, it's been a theme in this conference, but we've seen in recent years more and more children standing up. There are endless examples, but children in Hungary protesting in solidarity with their teachers in salary strike. I mean, not just looking at their own rights, but looking at the rights of their teachers as well. Of course, their work, young people's work around climate change is also about the rights of everyone. And then in some places, they're fighting against narrow citizenship laws that exclude Muslims. That's in India, for example. So one could go on, and in some places, as we have seen in Iran, children are actually paying the ultimate price, dying and being injured in standing up for their own rights and the rights of others. So it's clear that we're at a kind of crucial point. And as children move themselves to the front of the stage, the Committee on the Rights of the Child will also step up, because although we recognize and respect children as agents in their own change, we cannot and should not leave it up to them. It's our job too. It's the task of all of us, children and people working with and for children, including the Committee on the Rights of the Child, to ensure that children's rights are not further eroded. And we need more than ever to be rights-based. And in this sense, the Convention remains our major defense against backsliding. We need to maximize the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I want to also remind you that there is an optional protocol on a communications procedure through which complaints can be brought, and complaints can be brought about the shrinking space of civil society and about children's right to stand up for their rights. So please remember that that can also be used to good effect in the work of pushing back against the pushbacks. Thank you.
So wow, and your speech gave me lump storms. After listening to the positive actions you've mentioned, it gave me hope, because as a young lady living in a patriarchal system, it's rare to see great organizations like Child Rights Connect who are really making sure that children become key stakeholders. Thank you. So we're gonna go to the third panelist, who is Michelle Lolo, the UN Special Reporters on the Situation of Human Rights Defenders. So as the UN Special Reporters of Michelle Lolo play a vital role in monitoring and reporting on the situation of human rights defenders, advocating for their protection and raising awareness of their invaluable contribution. So she will talk about the positive societal change by child human rights defenders. So I pass the floor to Michelle Lolo. Her video statement.
Me to participate at this important conference today. And I'm sorry that I'm not able to join you in person. Firstly, I want to congratulate Child Rights Connect on your 40th anniversary, your commitment to advancing the rights of children and making sure that their voices are heard in the discussions and deliberations affecting them is truly admirable. And I have learned so much from you. I'm particularly grateful for your work on children as human rights defenders, which generated awareness about the rights of children and young people to advance and advocate for human rights issues. I appreciate the guidance and support to the mandate. I am especially delighted to know that so many children are participating in our discussion today and would like to welcome you and ensure you that I am always ready to advocate on your behalf with governments, the UN system, and other relevant stakeholders. The mandate can be a useful tool for your own advocacy efforts, from raising awareness about individual cases to highlighting broader trends. I encourage child rights NGOs to work together with broader human rights NGOs and vice versa. States should also further support the child rights movement in empowering children through human rights education and raising awareness about the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. In my last report to the Human Rights Council, I wanted to highlight the successes of human rights defenders in the past 25 years since the Declaration was adopted. As we were collecting inputs into the report, it became clear that many of these successes have been achieved by children who are human rights defenders over the years. Children and young human rights defenders have been working tirelessly over a broad range of issues, often at great personal risk, and proved themselves as drivers of change. For instance, in Bangladesh, the National Children's Task Force, an organization run by children, reported that working with the local district commissioner, it has prevented 13 child marriages, notwithstanding the fact that its members often work at great risk, including receiving death threats. I have also heard from children in Moldova who work on issues ranging from bullying in schools and demanding stronger environmental protection. I welcome that children are now increasingly involved in drafting legislation that impacts them, including initiatives on laws to protect human rights defenders. The Children's Parliament in Scotland works on climate crisis issues and succeeded in securing a commitment from the Scottish Government to introduce a ban on the use of single-use plastic. It cites Scottish Government officials as allies in funding its participation in a series of events. These are very encouraging developments, but during my discussions with children who are human rights defenders, I also heard about the difficulties and barriers that they are facing. Many tell me they are not being taken seriously by adults due to their age, and their voices are not being heard. A lot of them also mention societal issues where challenging traditional accepted norms in societies is often seen as out of bounds and immoral. Young human rights defenders are sometimes characterized as being without values and manners and are told by their parents to conform. For instance, one young human rights defender told me that his mother told him not to call her if he gets a protest, as she will not go to the police station. Children who are human rights defenders themselves or their parents may receive threatening phone calls following their activism. Their school grades may suffer due to their human rights activities. They might be physically attacked during protests, bullied in school for their activism, and be ridiculed and humiliated online. Young human rights defenders in many instances are not able to access support mechanisms that are available to other groups of human rights defenders. This has sometimes led to self-censorship and scaling back or altogether stopping their human rights advocacy work. Children who are human rights defenders face many of the same violations as all human rights defenders, but this is being compounded by specific barriers, risks, and reprisals due to their status in society, including age-based and gender-based discrimination, paternalistic attitudes, dependency on parents, being seen only as passive objects of protection rather than having agency, stigmatization, lack of access to child-friendly information and complaint mechanisms and support mechanisms. Additionally, the consequences of these violations may be way more severe for children than for adult human rights defenders. As I stressed in my report to the Human Rights Council and would like to reiterate here as well, I think it's crucially important that governments explicitly recognize children who are working peacefully for the rights of others as human rights defenders and promote the rights of children to be defenders. States should address negative attitudes towards children who are human rights defenders and build the capacity of state actors to engage meaningfully with children. I am disheartened that even 25 years after its adoption, there continues to be a lack of recognition that the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders also applies to children. I would like to reiterate that children have rights in their individual capacity, including civil and political rights. To commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, I am organizing a conference in June in Vienna for children who are human rights defenders and youth human rights defenders from grassroots level all over the world. I'm really looking forward to the recommendations from children human rights defenders present and will make sure to bring them back to governments and other stakeholders. Dr. Seuss said that adults are obsolete children. So as an old obsolete child myself, I would like to end my intervention with another quote from him. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So please continue to care. Continue to raise your voices for human rights, and we will do our best to listen and to bring your voices to those in power. Children who are human rights defenders will be one of my priorities over the next 3 years. Thank you.
So I'm very sorry because I said Michelle Aurore. So we're supposed to be Mary Aurore. So Michelle, I'm very sorry. So as Mary said, it's true that the work of children are not really taken into consideration. So it's a big problem we face as a human rights defender. So I'll really take, I'll pass to the fourth panelist, which is Michelle First. Michelle First is the special reporters on environmental defender. So from 2014 to 2020, he served as a UN special reporter on the situation of human rights defenders, with a strong commitment to protect the rights of individuals working to promote and defend human rights defenders. So, Michelle First, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gloria. And indeed, that's very good to be with you today to celebrate this 40th anniversary of Child Rights Connect. And I do remember that my first contact with Child Rights Connect was in January 2017. After a long series of consultations with defenders, I decided to do more to support young activists and children defenders. And together with the team, we met with Ilaria and the team and decided to work closely together. And I do remember the day of general discussions in which you invited many defenders to come to Geneva to meet with us and to discuss with us. And we made at the time a lot of concrete pledges and commitments. One of them for me was to at least invite children defenders in my country visits, which I did, to include a specific paragraph in all my country reports, which I did, also to organize consultations with defenders, which I did. And when we hold a meeting with Mary Lolo to hand over the mandate, I shared with her my concern about children defenders, and I'm very happy to see that not only she's continuing to do the work that I've started, but also that she's increasing the level and the quality of the work. Now to come to my new activity, 2 years ago, because states saw that there was an increased number of attacks and threats against environmental defenders, including climate activists, they decided to establish a new mechanism, and they called it a special, they call it a rapid response mechanism under the form of a special rapporteur on environmental defenders. And the idea was to respond immediately when we would receive allegations of threats or penalization or attacks against defenders, so that the mandate would be able to intervene immediately after receiving the complaints. They have decided, states, to establish this mandate within a legally binding instrument, which is the Aarhus Convention. That you maybe don't know this convention. It's a very interesting convention, sort of environmental democracy, built on 3 pillars. One is access to information, meaning that whenever a community, indigenous people, families, individuals might be affected by any environmental project, then they should be informed by the state or by the company on all developments on this new project. The second pillar is access to public participation, meaning that if you are affected by one of those projects, then states and companies have a duty to formally consult you, and you have a right to say yes or no, and the right to say no is also recognized in this convention. And the last pillar, also very interesting, is environmental justice, meaning that you have also the right to go to court to seek redress, reparation, and justice when your rights have been violated under this convention. Of course, the convention has been ratified by only 47 states, including the EU. That's mostly the big Europe, up to Moldova, up to Mongolia. But we are also an African state, Guinea-Bissau, that have decided to ratify this convention. It's an international convention, meaning that all states could decide today to also join the convention. Of course, the mandate is dedicated mainly to support and to protect defenders inside the broad Aarhus region. But the beauty of this mandate is that it has also what we call an extra-territorial scope, meaning that when a company, and we all know that companies are sometimes more dangerous for defenders than states, when a company has its headquarters in one of the countries which is party to the Aarhus Convention and would operate abroad, then defenders of those countries could come to me to seek protection and for me to prevent the risk. To give you some concrete examples, if a company based in Madrid would operate in Colombia or Peru, doing like palm oil deforestation and then threatening communities, indigenous people, then those people could come to my mandate and I'll be able to take their cases and to protect them. Another example, a famous example, if a French company, I won't name the name of the company, a French company operating in Uganda would do harm to defenders in that country or in Tanzania, then defenders from those countries could come to my mandate to seek protection. That's the beauty of the mandate, and I will, of course, use the same working methods as other special rapporteurs, length of allegation, public appeals, things like that. Now, with this new mandate, I've decided to travel to mainly Europe to meet with governments, to raise awareness on the mandate, but also to consult with defenders. What is it that they expect from this new mandate? And in my consultations, I've met with quite a high number of young defenders, including climate activists, young defenders, children defenders. And I've been impressed to see the increasing level of mobilization amongst young defenders and children defenders on climate. Children using those new forms of mobilization that we call civil disobedience, gluing their hands on a table or on the floor, blocking access to airport, throwing paintings on monuments, things alike, and being then arrested and brought to court and being sentenced. And we see that that's something which is increasingly in Europe, but also not only in Europe, but also in other countries. And the response coming from the governments is penalization, defamation, vilification of those defenders. They are called eco-terrorists, which is for me a shame, an offense to the real victims of terrorism. And by sending those messages, it's not only the people that they are defaming, but also the cause for which they are fighting, which is also defamed. Now we need to convey to states and to judges of those countries that those who are using civil disobedience and children defenders are using civil disobedience, that is protected by international law. The International Covenant on International Political Rights clearly has in Article 21 on freedom of movement, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly, a clear guidance on how to deal with civil disobedience. And more recently, in September 2020, the committee, the Human Rights Committee, in a general observation, decided, and I quote, that collective civil disobedience or direct action campaigns are covered by Article 21 of this convention, provided that it is not violent. Now, because I see that time is running, don't want to be too long. Like I did in the past DGD, I want to start with a series of concrete commitments for this new mandate. 7 commitments that I want to discuss with my teams and then share with you later on. The first is, of course, to review the formal complaints, which is currently on my website, to make sure that it's more children-friendly. The second is to use the 3 pillars of the convention. Remember, to ensure that child environmental defenders have access to information when it comes to any project around them. Second pillar, ensure that children public participation is clearly decided by states in decision-making process. And the third pillar, to ensure and to push for children defenders who have an access to justice through legal representation. The third commitment is to include children defenders in my consultations. I will start in the fall this year, having consultations inside the Oris region, and with my staff, we'll come back to Child Right Connect to make sure that we will also have the possibility to invite children to those consultations. And later on in 2014, 2024, we'll do consultations in Africa, in Asia, Latin America, and the Gulf region. We also invite children defenders. Fourth commitment, Inter-Americanist meeting. There is a meeting by which all special rapporteurs on defenders meet together. And we have discussed with Mary the possibility to have the next one dedicated to environmental defenders. And I want to make sure that at least in our discussions with Africa, with the Americas, with the UN, we have a specific slot dedicated to hear the voice of children defenders. The fifth agreement, the fifth commitment, in the Americas, you have the same as the Oris Convention, which is the Escazú Agreement. And I'm starting to speak with the Escazú Secretariat to make sure that they will also include the broad issue of children defenders in their discussions. The fifth commitment, at the end of this month in Geneva, from 26th to 28th of June, there will be what we call the meeting of the parties of the Oris Convention, which is dedicated to promoting access to information, public participation, and access to justice. And my idea would be that you could also be invited to have a say in those discussions. I've been discussing with Child Right Connect to make sure that at least they would also invite you to be part of this discussion. That's an open discussion on very interesting topic in which children have a right to have a say. Seventh and last commitment, you know that we have on a regular basis those COP meetings to prepare the climate conferences. And it's a shame that defenders are not enough associated in the preparation of those COP meetings. And together with a group of NGOs, Civicus is one of them, we are going to launch in the coming weeks a new initiative to make sure that states would invite defenders to participate in the pre-sessions and also invite defenders in the delegation that will go to Dubai for the next COP meeting. Why don't we lobby to make sure that children environmental defenders will also be included in those delegations and to have a right to give a say in Dubai on what they think on the outcome document. To conclude, and because I see also that that's what I saw in my discussion with defenders in Europe, there is an increasing feeling of anxiety amongst young climate activists. I would simply like to conclude by saying, I understand your feelings of helplessness and anxiety, and you have a right to be angry, and you have a right to be anxious, because eco-anxiety is also insight, and this insight is also a driving force because it pushes you to act and to open the eyes of others. I would like to tell you that even if you have sometimes the feeling of being isolated, like there are also people who hear you and fight to give you a voice in bodies such as the UN. That was the aim of these panel discussions. At my level, I will do my best to put as much boldness, as much energy, as much determination to defend children defenders and climate activists as you put in defending the future of our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Frost. I really love what you said, that we children have right to justice when our rights are cultivated or violated. So like, I would like to ask a question from the panel. So I believe that in each step we take, there are always difficulties, and hearing your positive feedback, suppose you always overcome these difficulties. What is the advice you can give youth or all those who are watching? So who is interested to reply?
So who wants to start?
So I think the advice that that we can offer is to say continue to work in the way that you are working, because I think that it's actually speaking truth to power and it's making a difference. Yes, it doesn't work magically overnight. So one other bit of advice that age tends to bring it with you is things take time. So it can be frustrating when you're a young person and you want to see immediate change. But it's a cumulative thing. Every step builds on something else. So it's really important to simply keep going and go with your instinct, but also be strategic. So being strategic about what you do also is a good way to make more and more impact with your work. Because as you see, sometimes if you say things in a certain way and nobody's listening, it might be because there's another way of saying that can be more attractive to decision makers and so on. So all the time you can be developing and honing your skills as activists in order to take forward what you do. And that actually, interestingly enough, means that just as we have to listen in our conversations with you as adults, we have to listen and take on board what you're saying. But you also will, as you go further and further in your work, will also start to listen, and you'll also start to hear, that's the message that I can connect to. Let me see how I can take that further. So it's a conversation. It's a conversation, a big, long, complicated conversation of trying to change things. You have the instinct in you. You're all doing it already. I think our best advice to you would be, go with the momentum that you've got, keep going, trust in the fact that there are others who listen and who do believe that you have the right to stand up for your own rights and to say what you want to say. We will try and do our part to promote the protection of your rights when they're under threat. And I guess it's your job to keep on being hopeful that you can change things.
Thank you.
Also,
okay.
Just really also to comment on your question. Yes, I mean, I think that the UN, but also our mandates, Mary, myself, your mandate, have not only been created to respond to complaints coming from those who are under threats, at risk, or being arrested or penalized, but they are also there to provide guidance and to do prevention. And we all know that it's better to prevent the risk than to take action when it's too late. So use also those possibilities to do prevention together, and using our mechanism to do that with the UN committee, providing information on the situation of countries so that the UN committee could also draft concrete recommendations that you see might be useful for you in your country, to help the committee to provide guidance to states. Come to me or to Mary when you see that a draft law is about to be passed that could be penalizing defenders, so that we could also comment on the draft bill, draft law, and prevent the risk to occur. So use also our mechanism as a tool to prevent the risk to occur in your countries.
I'm here to speak on behalf of Mary Lawler, the special rapporteur who delivered her statement via video, who was not able to be here in person. So just to respond to your question and reinforcing what Anne and Michelle have said, I think from our point of view, it's also important to receive information from you. So please do use the mechanisms that are available for you. A lot of them have been discussed here, and I think Child Rights Connect is happy to help guide you. We have a lot of, I would say, anecdotal evidence and a lot of evidence on trends of the threats, the attacks, the harassment, and the obstacles that you are facing. But we have very little cases, concrete cases to go on, at least from the point of view of the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, because we simply don't receive the submissions. And the mechanism, in order for the Special Rapporteur to be able to intervene with states, we do need these submissions from you. And they don't need to be complicated, because I hear from a lot of discussions where we meet human rights defenders, including children, that they are afraid that, you know, these are very complex and complicated mechanisms, and the submissions, you know, they're not able to do the submissions. What we need from you is a simple summary. It can be just, you know, 3-4 paragraphs at the beginning to substantiate the violation that has happened, when it happened, a little bit of a timeline and the perceived perpetrator. And from then on, the team of the rapporteur will get in touch with you, and we will go through you know, any other information that might be needed. So that was one of the things that I really wanted to reinforce, to make sure that you do use the mechanisms. And along the line of what Misha has said about, you know, not just reacting when the violations have already occurred, but to also act on the preventive phase. We have a lot of tools at our disposal to connect you with relevant mechanisms, to provide digital security protection, psychological support, all sorts of specialized training. So these tools are all available. And I just wanted to make sure that you are in touch with us and you make use of these. And then the final point, in every country all over the world, there is a UN country team. All of us, all the different parts of the UN are part of it. So UNICEF is represented, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and other parts of the UN are represented. I would really, really like to stress that it's important that you do get in touch with the country team if they are not already in contact with you, because they, again, are the direct links to the governments on the ground, and they're really able to connect you for anything you might need. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm gonna take some questions from the floor. Is there any child participant who have a question? Yeah.
Hello. First of all, congratulations on the incredible points brought. I'm Catarina. I'm from Brazil, and I'm a 16-year-old climate activist and advocate for children's rights. And I actually had a specific question to the Minister of Education of Iceland, if I'm not incorrect. And as the minister, you are in a position of power and with a place where you can make great change. And taking this in consideration, I would first like to know if there are any plans for the ministry to include UN mechanisms in the school's curriculum so that children can better understand it and use it for their empowerment. And furthermore, as the minister probably knows, Iceland did not join the OPIC, which is the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which actually, because my country signed the OPIC, I was able to send a petition to the Committee of the Rights of the Child because my rights were being violated, and therefore I could send this petition. And thinking about that, I would like to know if, as the Minister of Education, you would be able to urge Parliament to take the signing and ratification into consideration. Thank you.
Hola. Bueno, agradecer como el espacio. La pregunta que tenemos acá desde la plataforma por el protagonismo de niños, niñas y jóvenes en Colombia es, conocemos que hay una serie de mecanismos internacionales muy específicos dirigidos a que los niños y las niñas participen, como son los informes alternos que se pueden hacer con ellos y con ellas. Nuestra pregunta es, en caso de sistemas un poco más amplios, como por ejemplo el EPU, el examen periódico universal, ¿qué podemos hacer junto con ustedes para que la voz de los niños y las niñas sea incluida junto con la de los demás defensores y defensoras? Gracias.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Child Rights Connect, for organizing and convening us. I'm Gustavo. I'm advocacy advisor at Sexual Rights Initiative here in Geneva. And as mentioned by many of the panelists and many of the debates that we had also before, we're facing this unprecedented attack on many rights, and especially on LGBTIQ+ rights. Iceland has a very good and progressive law on gender autonomy that safeguards the interest of the child on their gender identity. I'd like to ask the minister if he could share any lessons learned or initiatives being developed by Iceland to share their experience on the implementation of this law. And I'd also like to ask Ms. Skelton on what steps are being taken by the committee to advance and protect the rights of LGBTIQ+ children, and especially trans and queer children, against this conservative and anti-rights wave. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Leticia. I'm from Alana Institute, a Brazilian-based organization. And considering the UN system, I would like to know your thoughts about how to engage companies so that they respect and take the voice of children into consideration as well, especially children from different backgrounds and the most marginalized ones. Thank you.
Okay, I will give the floor to the panelists to answer the questions.
Thank you for the excellent questions and also for the remarks from the other panelists. First of all, the questions about the mechanism in the school system. We have in the last, we can say last 5 to 8 years, we have been implementing a lot in the school system, implementing UNESCO schools. We are implementing the CRC in every municipality in Iceland now, and that requires the school in each municipality to change everything that they're doing. They have to teach the CRC, they have to respect voices of children, they have to involve them in everything. And it is challenging, you know, in some areas it is challenging because it requires a lot of change. If you really want to do it, it requires a lot from adults. So yes, we are taking some steps, but we are not there yet. We have a long way to go. And And we have some good municipalities that are doing it quite progressively, but we have other ones that are really just doing it on paper, you know, and it's really easy to do things on paper. And I want to reflect on that a little bit later on. Regarding the optional protocol, we are working towards it now. We have, a few years ago, we accepted a very progressive policy and the action plan that is fully funded and is being implemented now these years, which is called Child Friendly Iceland, of how we're going to implement the CRC fully, you know, but it's of course because it's never fully implemented. And part of it is that we are gonna implement the optional protocol, but that is done in another ministry. It's done in the Ministry of Justice. So we are working closely with that ministry, and that is a plan to do that in the next few years. About the progressive law Iceland has and the challenges, because there are challenges. I mean, there are conservative people in Iceland, like all around the world, you know, and there are quite. There are discussions now, especially from the conservative side of politics, older politicians, you could say middle-aged white men, regarding that we are being too progressive. Debate about we are teaching within schools are getting starting to have teaching material, learning material on these issues. And we have people that are blogging and coming to the media and saying, what are you doing to our children? But at the same time, we are trying to force a good discussion about it. So I would say it's going quite well, and we are being very progressive, but there are challenges. And then about the UN systems, about engaging companies to listen to the voice of children. What I figured by listening to this panel and also my experience, because, and I must say again, I'm not a specialist, but when you look at the UN system and when you think of the fact that we are really going backwards, I mean, the resources are decreasing when it comes to this, and it's all over. So what are we really doing wrong? You know, children have more possibilities to tell their opinion, to fight than they had for 10 years ago. And these wonderful people are doing their job every day with a passionate way, as they spoke here. So what I figured out, because what we did in Iceland is we tried to break down the barriers between the government, between the child rights movement, and between the NGOs, try to work together. And that is maybe something that we should consider when it comes to UN and the advocacy within the UN. Why are governments and NGOs not working officially together on child rights movement on some certain topics? Because it's silo-based there as well. So because the UN mechanism is good and the CRC is good, but somehow we are not managing to get it through. We get the voices to the leaders, and then nothing happens. So how can we really solve that? How can we resolve that on international basis and national basis? That are the ideas that go through my mind these days, and how can Iceland be part of that? And part of the contract with the Child Rights Connect is really about that, to governments working closely with grassroots, because that's where we break down the barriers. That's where good things happen, because governments on their own, they are not progressive.
I'd like to answer two of the questions that I think were partially directed to me. One was about using the UPR. And I think this is really a whole new space. I know it's an area that Child Rights Connect has been working on as well, involving children in UPR. I think one of the most useful things about the UPR process is that states have to say whether they agree with the recommendation, which doesn't happen in the treaty body review system. And then we, in the treaty body review system, can pick that up and say, we see that you accepted this recommendation when you went to the UPR. What's happened since then? Why have you not changed that? So I think it's very important to engage in that area. And I think that we'll see a lot more happening there. It is very different. So there's a lot of new skills that have to be learned, but I think it's an interesting and useful space to work in. And the other question that I wanted to answer was, what is the Committee on the Rights of the Child doing in relation to the rights of LGBTIQ children? So it is, these gender issues are on our agenda, if I can put it that way. Obviously, it's a space that is fast moving and requiring a lot of attention. We have, as long ago as when we issued our general comment on the rights of children in adolescence, the committee said there that states should put in place measures to ensure that all adolescents enjoy their freedom of expression and respect for their physical and psychological integrity, gender identity, and emerging autonomy. And that's some years back that the committee has said that. And I think that it would have been a fair critique to say that the committee tended to put LGBTI all together under non-discrimination would often simply put that string of letters. But I would say in the last couple of years we've been particularizing within that, and especially beginning with more and more recognition of the rights of intersex children. The committee has on now many occasions in concluding observations asked states to ensure that unnecessary surgeries on intersex children must be prohibited. And also recently in our concluding observations to Ireland, where Ireland already was working on amendments to a gender recognition bill to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to self-identify their gender for the purposes of documentation. I think we would say rather a cautious approach, because it rested on what Ireland was already engaged with and doing. But I think that was important, and also said that if Ireland is looking at going below the age of 16, which was also told to us by activists, that they should apply the necessary safeguards when looking at that further. And so I know that there are still some big questions ahead of us. We're aware, we're engaging. We're consulting with other treaty bodies such as CEDAW and with other special rapporteurs. We've had briefings and we intend to have more briefings. What I can say is we haven't taken a definitive decision that you can say this is absolutely our jurisprudence, but the jurisprudence is growing, and it's growing in a very conscious way.
Very briefly on companies, your question on companies is very relevant, in fact. And as I said in my statement, my presentation, and from my past experience, but also that's the case with Mary and working around business, we know that companies are sometimes and very often much more dangerous than states. That's the case in the field of extractive industries, deforestation, illegal lodging, fishery, agribusiness, things like, and we know that they are sometimes very dangerous for defense. The working group on business and human rights has recently issued guidance for companies on how to approach those who might be affected by their operations. And I'm not sure whether or not in this guidance tool there is a specific chapter dedicated to children defenders, but that might be good to look into this guidance note and together with Child Rights Connect, maybe to provide ideas and thought on how to review the guidance note and to include something new on children defenders. In the case of the convention to which my mandate is attached, as I said, at the end of the month, there will be this big consultation, the working group of the parties, and you also would have the possibility to give a say and to say to those states, in your processes of information, but also consultation, you should also include not only those who are affected, but include specific recommendations for children that are affected by those projects. The last point is what's happening at the level of the EU currently, and there will be soon. There will be a new directive adopted on due diligence that will also be a tool to enforce how companies would approach human due diligence. And together, Mary on her one, and myself, we have commented on this drafted due diligence directive. I mean, in my part, I forgot to include something on children defense. That might be the case for Mary, but in our discussion with the Parliament, we could also come back to them saying, why don't you also have in the paragraph dedicated to defenders a specific line at least, or a mention on children defenders. But I'm sure that OC will comment and complement, correct my.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually wanted to come in first on the question about the UPR and the use of the Universal Periodic Review process and add a little bit to what Anne has already said. I think in an ideal world, children should be part and parcel of the national preparatory process, the discussions that the governments go through before presenting their report and putting together their delegations for the UPR. This is happening in the case of many countries, but where this is not the case, you still have a lot of avenues, I think, that can be used and should be used. One option is to submit your own reports. Anyone can submit their own report to the UPR. This is then compiled in what is called the stakeholders information report. So this would be reflected there. Another option, or a parallel option, is to participate in the pre-sessions of the UPR. This is organized by another NGO. It's called the UPR Info. Ahead of every session of UPR considerations, which is, again, a very useful platform, I think, for especially youth defenders to be there and present their concerns. And this has been done for many countries. Last time from Israel, for instance, there was quite a big delegation of young defenders. And lastly, of course, an advocacy avenue would be to lobby directly with friendly governments to suggest recommendations in the UPR, which you would think would be pertinent. So you can go directly to permanent mission delegations and ask them to put these questions. The special rapporteur is doing something similar also from the background. Ahead of each session, we are proposing a set of recommendations to a group of countries to then use in their interventions. And as I already said, these are, again, very useful. So the accepted recommendations create an additional layer of discussions with the government, and are intensively used also by special procedures mandate holders and help their work as well. And then about the EU due diligence directive, yes, indeed, the participation of children has been flagged. We'll see how that will go. Thank you.
So thank you. Is there any question? Yeah.
Thank you once again. I actually had a question to Truster. As a child right advocate, you shared your experiences with us, and taking that in consideration, I would like to know some challenges you face through your journey, and what are some solutions that you find that helps you? Thank you.
Is it okay if I ask another question? Thank you. So this question is for Michelle first, but happy for anyone to answer it. So it was great to hear about this initiative with Civicus to increase civil society space during COP. And I think you also mentioned this idea of trying to include children in the state delegation, if I got it correctly. And I think many here and many of our members have been doing advocacy now for several years, trying to increase child participation and youth participation during COP meetings. And it's always, for whenever we try to increase child participation anywhere at the UN, it's a gradual approach. So it takes a lot of time. You sometimes have first a panel with children, then a dedicated space, then children are integrated in broader discussion. So it's always a gradual approach. And last year, we tried to partner with non-child rights organizations as well to try to increase the space for child participation at COP. But it was a very unique, well, I don't know if very unique, but it was a difficult situation where the COP presidency was held by a country with, very difficult human rights records. And there was, civil society, were trying to take a stand because there was no real civil society space. So it was very difficult to engage in that COP, very difficult to partner with other NGOs. And so, there was this dilemma, should we try to continue to increase gradually the space for children, or, we follow as well what other civil society movements were doing, which was they decided not to engage. And I think this could happen at the next COP, and this can continue to happen, where you have this dilemma, should we try to continue to push for the space for children, or, we also need to take a stand and, join what's, the other civil society broadly is deciding not to do, for example, not to engage. So, just a bit to put the picture where we found ourselves last year, but, beyond this concrete situation, I think it's very important for, child rights movement to partner with other NGOs, non-child rights NGOs, in order to create a space for children. And I also wanted to hear your messages. How do we partner with non-child rights NGOs? How do we make them take our message and help us increase the spaces for children in, fora where it's not, we have not had children in the past, and we want to make sure that they also have a seat. So yeah, this is my question for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And indeed, we all know that Sharm el-Sheikh has been quite complicated for defenders and climate activists. We know that Dubai also, on some occasions, will also complicated. That's why we have decided together with a group of NGOs to launch this new initiative, but I'm not allowed to disclose anything from this new initiative. It's just a sort of incentive to alert you that something will happen soon to prepare the next COP meeting and to make sure that at least defenders, including young defenders and defenders, could be included in the delegations from states going to Dubai to participate in the COP meeting. Yeah? In addition to that, some foundations have already secured a safe space in Dubai to organize panel discussions, inviting defenders to come and to give a say, to provide information. Again, I cannot disclose anything, but the space is already secured. So you will be duly informed on how to have an access to the next COP meetings. But again, that's good that Charlotte Connects remains connected with the large environmental organizations, discuss with them to make sure they also hear your voice when they discuss with governments on how to give an access and to grant an access to those who want to participate in the COP meeting. So I could come back to you and discuss with you in detail on how we could do that.
So Trustor, do you want to answer Katerina's question?
Thank you for your question. But there's really nothing that comes to mind. I mean, there are probably some troubles for kids with disabilities or from like different ethnic groups, but not for me. Or at least I have not had any until now. So thanks.
Now I'm turning to the panelists. Would you like to share some closing remarks?
Yes. Well, I think I should just say thank you on behalf of the panel to all of you for listening and for your great questions. And actually for throughout the day, it's been, I think, a very, very stimulating conversation that we've been having. And I think many of us who've been in the children's rights field for a long, long time can feel energized by new possibilities, even though the environment might be, the situation in which we're working is getting tough, especially in some parts of the world. That simply means that we have to work harder and we have to be braver. And I think being here and being amongst people who are willing to do that, whose work is that, and who are passionate about it, makes me feel like I'm part of a collective. And I think together we can stand firm on our belief in and commitment to children's rights. Thank you.
I will simply say you need to learn more on my mandate. Go to the website, look at what I'm doing, what I'm going to do. there's a clear strategy, a vision for the mandate, which has been developed, shared with your colleagues, because many of you don't know that there's a new mandate to protect climate activists and environmental defenders, including young people. And as I said, young defenders, children are using those new forms of mobilization, and that's for me a great concern. So I'm there to support you. The mandate has been created to protect you. So come to me and we'll talk together on how we could do better to support you in your countries.
Thank you. I also just wanted to thank you for your energy and a lot of food for thought, I think, that we can work on in the future, and I will transmit them to the Special Rapporteur as well for her work. I hope to see many of you in some of the upcoming consultations that the Rapporteur is holding online. We have been running a series of hearings, so hopefully a lot of you will be involved in those as well. Some of you may come to Vienna as well. But really, just a really big thank you for everything that you do, for your courage in this work, and we are at your disposal should you need the mechanism. Thank you.
I just want to say to the Youth Council members, even though you have a feeling it's happening too slowly and you're not changing the world fast enough, never give up, because good things happen in small steps. And it's the same if you're a minister and you want to change things. It's also hard to change it when you're a minister. So once you feel like you're not being listened to, speak with more power, involve more young people, and keep fighting, because that is the way you will change the world.
So it was a nice and amazing discussion, and I was blown away by what all of you said. So I would like to say that if you stand for a reason, be prepared to stand alone like a tree. And if you fall on the ground, fall like a seed that grows back to fight again. Thank you. So I'll give the floor to Alex for a short announcement.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Thank you for your moderation, Minister, distinguished panelists, for a really engaging and interesting panel discussion. I just have some housekeeping matters. So we're going to break for coffee just outside the room. We will next split into parallel working groups. So if you have an interest in working group 3 on access to justice for children's rights defenders, that will be here in this room. If you have an interest in working group 4 on protective mechanisms, that will be in room 2-3 upstairs. And I've been asked to, by the interpreters, to remind you that the headsets that you find in this room, please keep them in this room, and likewise the headsets that are in room 2-3, please keep them in that room. If you've sneakily put one in your pocket, return it so that the interpreters don't see. That's great. And then one final reminder, please, to, as a matter of preference, not take videos or pictures that include children in them. If you have done so, please do not share those without first speaking explicitly with the child that is in that image. Some of our child advisors are happy to be in pictures or videos, but part of our policy very explicitly is that that prior consent is required. So please bear that in mind. Thank you very much and enjoy the break. So we are here at the closing, and before I give the floor back to Mari as President of Child Rights Connect to formally close the conference, there are 3 things I want to say. I know it's the end of the day, so I'm going to keep it brief. First of all, you may have noticed that all parts of the conference have been recorded. although sometimes the recordings have stopped and started in the middle of someone's interventions. On our conference webpage, we will post conference session recordings, also recorded messages, including a video statement that Ambassador Yoglaba has prepared because he was unable to join us for technical reasons. We at the Secretariat will use today's discussions, which I think you'll agree have been so very rich, to help us draw key findings and recommendations as an outcome document for this conference, but not just as a document. We want to use those findings and recommendations for several reasons: to strengthen our global advocacy, to inform our contribution to the OHCHR Human Rights 75 initiative that you will have heard of, which, as the High Commissioner said several times apparently, will influence the OHCHR vision statement on human rights. And third, to identify global, potential global responses to the challenges that we're facing. And our intention is to use all of this to inform the development of our next strategic plan, which our network will adopt in 12 months.
Estratégico que nuestra red.
I'm not sure. Second, please provide feedback on how the conference went. The links are in the conference pack, in the Zoom chat, on our conference webpage. We'll also send a follow-up email. We've prepared a short survey, both for adults and in child-friendly format. We really value your feedback. Please give us some feedback. And lastly, thanks. Thanks to our child advisors, to Fran, Gloria, Caterina, Doris, Michael Angel, Ana Catarina, Trostur, Arjun, Hala, Angelina, and Rueda. To the child human rights defenders that joined us from Bulgaria, Alexandra, Donka, Alicia, and Denica. To the members of the Committee on the Rights of the Child who have joined us, especially in the afternoon, while the rest of the committee worked to continue to conclude their session in Geneva today. To all of our other speakers and moderators, and those, importantly, that worked behind the scenes to facilitate their engagement, and we know that there was a lot of work done. To all of you that participated and engaged and contributed in such a meaningful way. To our partners and donors who provided financial and technical support, in particular the Canton of Geneva, Terre des Hommes Lausanne Foundation, and the Global Initiative on Justice for Children. Our volunteers, Batul, Oshin, Sophia, and Linda, thank you so, so much. Our interpreters, without whom we could not have engaged as we have been able to do. Thank you so, so much. And to the amazing team at Child Rights Connect, including our interns. You have worked long hours to make this event happen. You've done that with great patience, with dedication, with support to each other. And I'm really, truly privileged to be part of this wonderful team. And I'd like to mention two people in particular. Eamon, our event manager. You've been absolutely amazing. You have Armin, I'm sorry, our event manager. Where are you? You've been absolutely amazing. You have done so much in 6 weeks. I can't believe how you've done that. You've worked incredibly long hours as part of the answer to that. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Lere. Lere has done the most incredible job. The most incredible job in coordinating all aspects of the conference. We're a small team at Child Rights Connect. Lere has mobilized us all to bring this conference together. She's thought through the big picture stuff, all the details too, and this conference would not have been what it is without you, Lere. Thank you. Thank you, Mari.
Thank you, Alex. Of course, first of all, I would like to join you with all the thank yous, because I guess it was a wonderfully organized event, very successful. Thank you very much for all those who were part of it, including you, of course, the Secretariat, the team behind you, the interpreters, and of course the participants. And I'm also delighted to welcome the former directors of Child Rights Connect, Laura, Nigel, and Lisa, for me especially because I've been working with you for so many years, and it was really a pleasure and an honor. I shouldn't cry, but it's good to see you here. So finally, it's hard. I hope you agree that today's conference has been an important moment for child rights advocates and the movement to reconnect alongside children themselves, as well as colleagues from outside the movement. I won't attempt to recap what has been said, but I encourage you all to reflect on discussions and follow the steps to be taken by the Child Rights Connect Secretariat. Let us use this moment to reinvigorate ourselves and our work and somehow recover from all those years of difficulties and hardships. So after this very long and fruitful day, I wish you all a very safe trip back home for those who are traveling, and of course a wonderful weekend for all, and summer and everything good, whatever you wish for yourself. So I had a big close the conference and wish you all the best. Thank you very much.